listens close, he lets your thoughts unroll, then finds the thread and takes precise control. Oh, bug in the machine, he sets the truth alight, demolishing the shadows, bringing clarity to sight. A master of the mind, a subtle, graceful fight, leaving no doubt, just pure, pure, brilliant light. The points unwind, the arguments align. He sees the flaws, the gaps, the subtle sign. He doesn't crush, he simply disentangles, unraveling the knots, unbending all the angles. No raised voices, no attack, no heat, just weaving words, a rhythm cool and neat. He listens close, he lets your thoughts unroll, then finds the thread and takes precise control. Oh, bug in the machine, he sets the truth alight, demolishing the shadows, bringing clarity to sight. A master of the mind, a subtle, graceful fight, leaving no doubt, just pure, pure, brilliant light. Walk away bewildered, some just stare, but in their minds a new idea's there. He sows the seeds of thought with every phrase he crafts, leaving a space where ardor sadly Oh, bug in the machine, he sets the truth alight, demolishing the shadows, bringing clarity to sight.
All right. Okay. We're all set. All right. Um. Yeah, I know, Unite. That's my bad. If you guys disagree with the background or have any questions, request up as guest. Maybe we can get some Protestants up here today. What's up, YouTube? Thank y'all for joining in. I appreciate y'all for all tuning in. What's up, Unknown? What's up, Axiom? Hopefully we can get a pretty good live today. We just got to get someone up here. Rob, you can come up, and I can prove God for you. Hopefully we can get this TikTok live started up. I got some good reacts for y'all today too. And a debate on argument for motion to react to. So that should be pretty fun. I hope the doc helped everyone. And all right, we got someone coming up. All right, what's up, Senior?
So what makes you orthodox?
Yeah, so because Christ established an infallible church according to the scriptures.
Yeah.
And they're the only two churches that trace back to the time of Christ that could be this infallible church would be the Catholic and Orthodox Church.
So you would say the Roman Catholic Church, so the same people who cast lots for Jesus' stuff and put them on a cross is the same one who
those aren't the same
established
people.
a religion. Yes, they are. They're Romans, weren't they?
Yeah, but that's not the same people. Roman
How can they not be
Catholics
the same
are
people?
the Christians who lived in Rome.
No,
And
the
we're
Christians who
Romans,
lived in Rome
yeah.
were Hebrews. They were Hebrews.
During that time, the people who were selling Christ clothes weren't Christians.
Yeah, they were Romans.
They weren't Roman Catholics.
Yeah, so they were Christians, right? So then,
No,
you said, like Paul was a Christian, right? Paul was but he said he was born in Rome, yeah, but his first thing was a Hebrew. He was of the tribe of Aaron, right? He was from the priesthood. So he was a Hebrew first. So that's what I'm saying. It doesn't make sense how you have people who, I mean, like they don't even speak Hebrew. They speak Greek and Latin, right? The languages of the Roman Empire, right? And it's just connecting the dots for me. That kind of like I can't see how it would be the Roman Catholic Church as the church that Christ would establish.
Yeah, I mean, I did end up Orthodox, but I mean, the Roman Catholics didn't even exist. So to say that they were the ones that were selling Christ clothes and doing that stuff is just impossible.
I'm just putting two and two together because I'm like, Pontius Pilate, those guys, they were Romans, you know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden, a little bit after, Paul does his ministry, poop, there goes the Roman Catholic Church. It's kind of like,
Well, it wasn't just like who the Christians that were in Rome and that stuff were persecuted until like what 300s when it was Christianity became the established religion of Rome.
That's what they say.
I mean,
But
that's just
we could
history
date it back
says.
to
Even Roman
we could date it back
documentation.
to Constantine the First
Yeah.
as the establisher of the Catholic Church, who himself he wanted to do. Hold on. He wanted to do Christian practices, but then he wanted to keep his pagan ways
Mm-hmm.
of idol worshiping. So that's why, honestly, the only true way out of all these ways is just the follow of the way. You could even say
Well, real quick
Hebrew
question for you.
Israelites would be close.
No, the Hebrew Israelites are so far off, dude. Do you believe that Christ established a church?
I think Christ told his people to go free and I mean he did establish on the rock with Peter,
Yeah.
but then he gave us directives of spreading the word and feeding the poor and
Right.
feeding
And
the widows.
do you
and stuff
believe
like
this
that,
church is infallible?
Somewhat.
Okay.
It needs to be cleansed though.
All right. Are you a Hebrew Israelite?
No, I'm not. But I've heard some of the doctrine. Although I don't agree with all of it, I do agree with some of it.
Okay. So when you said that you believe like the church needs to be like cleared?
I mean, it's not mine. It's from scripture. You could look at
Yeah. Okay.
Revelations when Paul himself. When Paul himself, wrote these. Well, not Paul, John. I'm sorry. In the visions of John and Revelations, right when Christ was writing to each church
Mm-hmm.
and saying things that they were doing good and things that they needed to clean up. You know what I'm saying? Like the Church of Philadelphia
Yeah,
and all these
like
other
a
churches,
specific
right?
church.
So,
Sure.
yeah, these churches. So it is proven that the church needs to be cleaned up. It's gonna happen. It's prophetic. Yeah, because there are people who are I can believe you could correct me if I'm wrong. There's people like Matthew 5:17 that talked about people who there's a wolf in sheep's clothing. People who are going to teach a twisted doctrine, false doctrine. There's going to be false teachers and prophets out there, and the Antichrist will come. You know what I'm saying? And twist people around the word. So.
Well, I mean that wouldn't be
All
the
that
church
is
though,
prophetic.
right?
But they will be inside the church though. They'll be working inside
Yeah,
the
but
church to
They,
steer people.
that wouldn't
out
they
of
wouldn't
the
have
way.
like it wouldn't be infallible. It wouldn't be authoritative.
I mean, if they didn't have any authority, Paul wouldn't have wrote on it. poll, and Jesus wanted to comment on it, and
What do you mean?
Jude,
Like
was a
when they're
Jew,
saying, when they're talking about like how there will be false teachers and wolves dressing as sheep and stuff, that doesn't mean that like that. Yeah, I would agree that there's people that'll spew false doctrines and that stuff. Like I think the entirety of the Protestant Reformation is that. Um,
Oh, really?
yeah, because they reject the infallible church Christ established.
Mm,
They couldn't
or
even be
was
a
it
possible contender
how? How so?
because if you could say like technically they trace back to the time of Christ in the sense that they it started with like a schism, them schisming from the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church chases back. But um, I firstly their teachings are not were contradict the dogmatic and infallible teachings of the church and the ecumenical councils, which were dogmatized long before they ever existed. They also reject the authority of the church because they schism from them, which means they separated themselves. They
Yep.
were teaching against the authority of the church, which if the church is infallible and it is saying, and you are breaking away from it, rejecting the authority, which biblically I believe it's Acts 16 verse 4 that says that the elders and leaders are placed as overseers to guide the flock by the Holy Spirit. Um,
Hmm.
they are completely outside of the possibility of being that infallible church. They
Okay,
what did
so
you
do
say?
you know the history of the reform, the Reformation movement?
I know some.
Actually, okay. Do you know why it led to them schisming away from the church?
Why?
Well, they believe. I mean, to twiddle down the history, they believe that the church, so like the
Mm-hmm.
Pope and the fathers and the bishops and everybody like that, that they weren't holding themselves to the commandments, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they were breaking commandments, multiple of commandments, right? And then being they were being worshipped. They were breaking the first commandment, which says, "Do not put anything above God," right? Do not place anything before God. So and that they felt as if the Pope and all these other people
Mm-hmm.
were becoming too haughty and becoming above was getting too influential above God. So that's why they kind of schismed out. Well, just to be simply put that in simplistic terms.
Yeah. I mean, I would say another reason is before pre-schism, right? The, the Orthodox and Catholic Church, and even pre-schism from them, for them, when we were one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, we understood that one of the necessary requirements would be apostolic succession, which the Protestants do not have. For example, the Protestant Reformation started with Martin Luther, right? Martin Luther did not have any apostolic succession. He was not ordained by a bishop or anything like that from the Catholic or Orthodox Church. So they don't have apostolic succession at all, which would be another reason why they're completely left out of contention to be that infallible church. Um, and and it's been a thing, like a requirement since before the Catholic and Orthodox Church split up. The Protestant Reformation has also been deemed like heretical by both the Catholic and Orthodox Church. So I mean, they're completely out of the picture of even being possibly being the church that Christ established. So you're really only left with the Catholic or Orthodox Church.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, if you want to trace it all back historically, it really kind of the whole seed started with I believe it was King James. He wanted a divorce, and one of your popes, I think it was I forgot what pope was it that he didn't want to grant the divorce to him.
I think it's King Henry or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, King Henry, and then one of the popes didn't want to give him the divorce, because of for I mean, obviously, because he was gonna divorce a Catholic woman, I think Catherine, right, the
Hmm.
Great, and he was gonna marry another woman, right, and that was the whole Catholic Church was up was all up in arms over it. So he didn't get his divorce. He wasn't granted his divorce. So then King Henry made his own church called the Church of England, right?
Hmm.
And that's where that so I think that was really where the seeds came from. But I think that if the Catholic Church had just granted King Henry
Well,
the
that's another
divorce.
problem. I mean, that makes it even worse. If you're breaking off because like you're asking for permission to do something which goes against the teachings of the church, and then and then you break away with that, once again rejecting the authority. I mean, that's just another like attack against Protestantism even being the church, right? But I
Yeah,
mean,
but
you could all
yeah,
boil
yeah.
it down to apostolic succession, because at the core, pre any schism, when we were one like universal church all together, like according to like Nicaea 1, the Council of Nicaea, being like apostolic succession has always been something that's necessary. And to even become a bishop or have authority, specifically Nicaea, I believe, says that like a bishop needs to be appointed by like all the bishops of that province, which the none Martin Luther, like, and the entire those people never had that. They never had the apostolic succession. So it just boils down to that at its very core. They're completely left out of the picture.
Yeah, I get it. They completely left out a person. That's just where things like the Geneva Bible came in. Came about. Different Bibles, and But like I said, things like little things like that. If the church made certain different moves, I think the Catholic Church would been whole right now. It wouldn't have been all these schisms, right? So, for example, like I said, we're using that example. I mean, technically, biblically, the Pope could have granted just a certificate of divorce, you know what I'm saying? And be like, because he's coming to the church. So he had kind of biblical grounding, the king, for divorcing him, but because of ulterior motives, you know what I'm saying? Like I said,
Hmm.
the divorce would have fractured the Catholic Church with the crown of the English crown, right? So there's political motives. I think that that's what he decided against that, But like I said, there's a lot of things that worked out politically against the Catholic Church, which caused the schisms to happen.
Well, appreciate the conversation, brother.
No problem.
Yeah. God bless.
No problem.
All right, we got 4chan atheist up. What's up, bro?
Your entire post. Jesus is God. I can look obviously debating all these people. Okay. Do you have empirical, objectifiable, observable, testimonial evidence that your God is real?
I can
No
deductively
arguments.
prove.
Like
I have a deductive proof of God.
I am not interested in deductive proof. I'm interested in empirical, objective.
Can you justify me why I would need to
observable
use
testimony.
empirical proof to prove a metaphysical being?
Because
which
the
doesn't
God of
really
the
exist?
Bible makes specific scientific claims that are disproven by modern science. So if you can
Like
prove that
what?
the Earth is flat, I can believe that your religious convictions are true.
Like what? Firstly,
global flood.
even given that's the case, why would that mean I then need to empirically prove God, who is a wouldn't that be a category error, since I'm proving
No, it's
trying
not
to prove a
category error because the God
metaphysical
of the Bible
being that
interacts with
isn't
nature.
empirical at all empirically?
Oh, okay. So now you're trying to shove in the transcendental argument when I ask for
How
arguments.
where did I shove in the transcendental argument?
You're trying to arm a transcendental argument, saying
How?
that God is the necessary precondition for logic and
I
intelligibility.
never brought that up.
Therefore,
I'm not even trying to
Well,
do
you're
that. I
bringing
don't
that
want
up.
tag. By saying God is
Okay.
metaphysical,
God also interacts with the natural world, right?
You could indirectly, sure, but he's not to
Well,
empirically.
if he does,
How do
then
you?
he should be able to be detectable by natural means.
Okay, no, not necessarily. No.
Yes.
You
yes,
how would you empirically go about proving a metaphysical thing?
You would have to show me that this metaphysical thing exists first.
Yes. For example,
And
like, do you
by
believe in the laws of
metaphysics,
logic?
That just tells me it exists in your mind.
Do you believe in the laws of logic?
Okay, again, you're trying to show
Well,
me transcendental
this is
arguments.
this. How does the law of logic have anything that? That's not the transcendental argument, dude.
Yes, that is the transcendental argument. You're trying to shove the transcendental argument.
How am I trying to
argue.
shove the transcendental argument by asking if you believe in the
Do
laws
you
of logic?
believe the laws of logic exist? Well, God is the necessary precondition for the laws of
No,
logic.
I'm not trying to go about that God is the necessary precondition for the laws of logic. I don't even
Okay,
run.
then
Once again, I don't
shove your-
run tag.
Shove your version of tag there.
I don't run any version of tag.
Okay.
Now, I'm
Onto
gonna ask
that.
you again. Do you believe the laws of logic exist?
Yes.
Okay. Can you empirically prove them?
Okay, congratulations. You just shoved the transcendental argument. Thank you.
No, because the proof isn't empirical. It's
Phil, bro.
to prove they exist
Phil,
is because
bro,
they're
deprogram
self-evident truths. For example,
Phil,
like
bro,
to say
deprogram
the
them.
law of
Not in the manual.
non-contradiction doesn't exist would require the law of non-contradiction to be true.
Phil,
Right.
bro, deprogramming.
That's
Not in the
that's not
scripts.
transcendental argument.
Phil,
This is
bro,
way before
deprogram
tag
them.
even existed in classical theism
bro,
with
deprogram
Aristotle, who founded the laws of logic.
Phil, bro, deprogramming. Not in the manual.
What?
Not in the scripts.
What's not in the script?
The way I'm actually tackling your arguments.
You're
Can
not
you keep
tackling
it out of
anything.
the
I haven't even
philosophy
brought up.
realm?
I haven't even brought up my
Can you
argument.
can you take it out of the philosophy, bro? I'm not interested.
Why
in
can I
bro,
use
content.
philosophy?
Because philosophy is not the right tool to prove.
Why is it
a
not the
deity
right
that
tool?
interacts with the natural world.
Why is it not the right
If-
tool?
Because philosophy doesn't investigate the natural world. You need science to do that.
Okay, so are we talking about the natural world or are we talking about a metaphysical being?
Well, this
Oh, if we're talking about a metaphysical being. So I'm not trying to prove
Okay,
something
this
in the natural
metaphysical
world.
being,
I'm trying
quote
to prove a
unquote,
metaphysical
interacts with
being.
the natural world.
You're talking about using the wrong tool, but you're wanting me to empirically prove something that's not empirical
Okay, so
at
if
all.
it's just
That's not
metaphysical, it just
possible.
exists in your brain. Thank you.
You believe the laws of logic exist. The laws of logic are metaphysical.
Yes, the laws of logic, because we have many points of references to prove that logic exists.
Are
in
the laws of
works.
logic metaphysical?
They're prescriptive, not descriptive.
Are they metaphysical?
They could be.
Are they made
like
out of
math?
matter?
No.
Okay, so then they're metaphysical. But you just
Okay,
told me
so
that
then
metaphysical things don't
congratulations.
exist. So do you retract your
So then
statement?
congratulations that God just exists in your brain. Thank you.
You said metaphysical things just exist in our brain, but then you're saying that the laws of logic exist and they're metaphysical. You're contradicting yourself.
It's the language we created to explain logic. That's just like numbers.
The
It's a
laws of
language we
logic
created
are
to
the
explain
language we
numbers.
created to explain logic? Okay. Like, how does that have any relevance with what I said?
Just because logic exists, that doesn't mean your God magically exists.
I'm not arguing that because logic exists, therefore God.
Okay, then take it out of the realm of philosophy, because I'm not interested in
Why
philosophy.
can't I use
I'm interested
why
in
can't I
science,
use
empirically.
philosophy to prove God deductively?
Because philosophy is not the right tool, and
Why is it
involves
not the
nature.
right
So-
tool? What's the justification
Because
for
it
that?
involves other realms like science, right?
How does that mean logic is the wrong tool and I can't use it?
Do you think your God created the entire universe and everything in it?
Yes, I believe he's the source, the first cause.
Okay, so now you have the first cause argument. Okay. What reliable method do you have to detect this deity without philosophy? I'm not.
Why
interested
can't
in
I use
philosophy.
without philosophy?
You have
Explain to
philosophy,
me
I
how
am not
this isn't
interested
a
in.
restrictive argument fallacy.
It's a restrictive argument. Okay, because I'm not allowing magic into the picture. That's why.
What's your justification as to why I can't use philosophy to prove God?
Okay, so basically, why I can't use magic? Why I can't use because magic.
Well, I mean, you can
doesn't
justify.
exist.
Can you justify your claim that philosophy is just magic?
It's not magic.
Because you
Well,
affirm
it
that
doesn't-
the
it
laws
doesn't-
of logic exist. So, are you affirming magic exists?
No, I am not affirming.
Okay,
magic
so then
exists.
the
I'm
philosophy
not
isn't
saying-
magic.
I know it's not magic. but
Okay, so then
it's
you're
analogous to
contradicting
what
yourself.
You're trying to say. You're trying to bring
Are
philosophy.
you special
into
pleading
existence.
now?
You can bring anything into existence using philosophy. So I am not interested in
No.
philosophy. This is just.
What do
this is
you
just
can't just
Phil
bring
Bro
anything into
apologetics.
existence using philosophy.
You're defining a God into existence. That's what you're
How?
doing.
Okay, so without you haven't even heard my argument, but I want you to
Okay, because I'm
explain
not
to me.
interested in
I want you to
arguments. I'm
explain me how I'm
interested
just
in tangible
defining
evidence.
God into existence.
I'm interested in tangible evidence. Do you have that? Yes or no?
Why? Once again, why would I need
not interested
tangible
in
evidence
Philbro.
to prove God?
I'm not interested in Phil, bro.
That doesn't matter if you're not interested. I
I'm
mean,
not
you can hold an illogical, unjustified position if you want. Just saying, if you're just going to say that you don't want to use philosophy just
Phil Bro
because you don't feel like
apologetics.
it. I can't prove God because you don't feel like it.
Okay,
Like,
thank you.
what?
Thank you for saying you can't prove God. Thank you.
No, if you're saying I can't prove God using philosophy because you don't feel like using philosophy, that's just not illogical. That's just an anecdotal fallacy.
No, that's not an anecdotal fallacy. It's because you.
Oh, you can't use this because I said so, because I don't
interacts
feel
with
like it. I don't want to. That's an
No, because,
anecdotal
no, because
fallacy.
because philosophy doesn't get you to a God.
How does it not get me to a God? I mean, do you want to test that out by hearing the argument?
No, because I could just replace.
Okay,
the
so you're
flying
just going to
spaghetti
make
monster
that
with the
claim
arguments.
baselessly?
Okay, then I can.
So is that
replace
just
the
a
flying
bare
spaghetti
assertion
monster with any
fallacy then?
deity that you do not believe in.
You're saying I can't use philosophy to prove God, and then when I ask if I can do that to prove you wrong, it's no?
Because it would
Is
be.
this because you said
analogous
so
to
as
any
well?
other deity.
What'd you say?
So replace God with the flying spaghetti monster. Whatever argument you're going to bring up, replace it with the flying spaghetti monster.
That's not a problem. I mean, if you hold that
Okay, go ahead.
Premise 1, things in the universe are in motion. Premise 2, nothing moves itself. Premise 3, a chain of movers can't go on infinitely in a per se causal chain, meaning there can't be an infinite regress. Premise 4, therefore there must be a first mover that isn't moved by anything else. Premise 5, this first mover is purely actual, the source of all motion and change. Premise 6, whatever is purely actual acts not by necessity alone but by intrinsic power. Premise 7, only a conscious being, one with intellect and will, can originate motion from itself without being moved by another, because it does not act by compulsion or external causation. And premise 8, therefore the first mover must be conscious, it initiates all motion not by being moved but by willing. The conclusion is this fully actualized conscious first mover is what we call God.
No, flying spaghetti monster.
Okay, so I mean, if you're holding that the flying spaghetti monster is fully actualized, like a metaphysical being that's conscious, and is the first cause, then are you holding to that?
Well, I'm gonna see how you disprove the flying spaghetti monster because
Well,
you do not believe in the flying spaghetti monster.
Okay, are you
right?
holding that?
So then
that's
I
what-
arbitrarily put the flying spaghetti monster there.
Are
just
you
like
Are
arbitrarily
you
put
holding
God.
that that's what the flying spaghetti monster is? It's the first cause that's conscious, fully
I'm
actualized,
defining
and
it into
metaphysical.
existence just like you did.
Is your flying spaghetti monster the first cause that's conscious, fully actual, and metaphysical?
Yes, I'm defining
Okay,
it
then-
as such.
then you're just
arbitrarily,
holding
like
to
you
a
did
God.
with your God.
You're holding to a God then, that God's necessary, that and you're just identifying your God as a flying spaghetti monster.
Okay, so
So
I
you're no
arbitrarily
longer
did it. Now
atheist.
disprove it. So now disprove it.
That's the point of the argument, isn't to prove a specific God. It's to prove a God is necessary. And if you're affirming this, then a God's necessary. Whether you call it a flying spaghetti monster
This is
or
the
not,
problem with
doesn't
your
matter.
verbal
All you
bullshit.
did
You're
is just
defining
agree
shit.
that my
You're just
argument
defining shit into
deductively
existence.
no
That's the problem.
no.
You're defining shit into existence.
How am I
You
defining
just did.
how am I defining things into existence?
You just said it. You're just presupposing that this has to happen. Period.
What did I presuppose this has something has happened?
You presupposed this first cause arguments.
What part of my premises did I just presuppose?
All of it.
Okay, so for example, like if I justify the claims, then is it not a presupposition?
Okay, go ahead with the
Okay,
first
so
premise. Go ahead.
things in the universe are in motion. Motion meaning change. Would you agree with that?
If everything in motion and change. Let's look that up. Let's see if physics agrees with you.
Why would physics be relevant for a
Oh,
philosophical
that's why.
Well, I mean, no,
Okay,
it's
this is-
because
this is
motion,
why, because you're
motion,
just saying
yeah.
shit
So genius.
without-
Motion, as defined in this argument, is change, which is going from a potential to actuality. Motion as defined in physics is completely different. So it would be a false equivalence fallacy
Okay,
if
so
you're
then
using the
that's why I
physics
don't give a
definition of
fuck what-
motion
I don't give a
compared to
fuck
the
what philosophy
philosophical
says.
definition
I
of
give
motion.
a fuck of what physics says because physics actually has tangible uses to it. Your form of philosophy doesn't.
Okay, your laws of logic don't have tangible uses for it. I mean, at this
My
point,
laws
you're
of
special
logic?
pleading. You're complaining
My
about
laws of
how
logic.
it's not empirical, it's not tangible, etc. While also
My laws of
affirming that
logic.
there's a non-empirical, non-tangible thing called the laws of logic that you affirm.
My
You're
laws
just
of logic.
special fleeing. Your laws of logic.
My laws of logic.
You're a genius,
mine.
dude. What up, hipster?
Hello there. Hello there. I'm not that experienced in philosophy. I know like a little bit.
Yeah, that's all good.
So just a few things to confirm. You're Christian, right?
Yeah.
You believe God has impact on the physical world.
Through his energies.
Okay. Do you believe that he created the world in 5 days? Is it 5 or 7?
It's 6 and then 7-day rest, but I don't affirm that it was actually 6 days.
Okay, why?
Because it ultimately, ultimately we don't know. I would affirm that we don't know, but personally, I would say that like, I would trust in like just what science has to say with that. If science, with what we have, what science says on the dating, it's a process that happened over what, like 18 billion years. So I would trust with them just because the Bible doesn't specifically tell us directly.
So how old does the Bible claim the earth to be?
I mean, it doesn't claim a specific date. Some people try to use the genealogies to show like it's 5,000 or 6,000 years old, but the genealogies are never in the Bible are just like summed up to get to a specific point. It's not like literally every single person.
What do you mean by that? Like, explain. Like,
For example, like if they're showing that David comes down from the descent of Abraham, it skips a bunch of people and just shows like main figures, and they try to use that to show like the earth is X amount of years, but it's not actually like every single generation in person from Abraham to David. It's like a summarized genealogy.
can I just Google if there's a specific verse? I swear there's a specific verse for this.
For what? The genealogies? Tell him that we define math into existence. He's not ready for that. Unknown. I don't want to do that to him.
Oh crap! I got guests over. Alright, sorry man. I actually got something to do.
All good.
Sorry man. Alright.
Yeah,
Stay
you're free
safe,
to come
man.
up another time. Stay safe, brother.
Alright. Peace, love, and plants.
God bless. What up,
Hello?
Nerner?
Hi. So I want to preface by saying I am Christian, but could you like discuss the problem of suffering? That's always something I've like wondered about and struggled
Yeah.
with.
So a couple things. Firstly, just the preface, right? God is like a lot of people say that God is like created evil and that sort of thing, but that it's not the case. We know that, for example, God is fully actualized, so he's like all good and all perfect and those sorts of things. There's something called the ontological principle. Essentially, like you cannot give something you don't possess, right? So we know from a start that evil isn't real, kind of like darkness isn't like an actual thing. It's just the privation of light. Evil is just the privation of good. Ultimately, as to why there is evil and suffering, obviously, like the Adam and Eve story kind of puts this in, like gives us a base reason, but ultimately we don't know. But this is something we call an epistemic limitation. We are finite humans, and we're talking about trying to understand the mind and reasoning of a all perfect God who's like we don't have direct access to his mind, and it's not a logical, like an illogical position. It's logically valid.
Okay, but you'd agree that God is all powerful too. So I don't see, if he's all good and all powerful, why he would allow the
I mean,
suffering.
ultimately, we don't know. It's not something that's been revealed to us, but I mean, that's not necessarily a problem with, like, logically, that we don't know. If anything, arguing that, if they try to argue against you, if you're holding that we don't know, it's just an argument from ignorance. Like, oh, because we don't know or don't have an explanation, therefore God's bad. That's just an argument from ignorance. It's the same thing as, like, back in the 600s, they didn't know who created lightning, so they just said, oh, because we don't know, it's actually God. That's what we call a God's the gaps fallacy, or an argument from ignorance. Um,
I
it's
think,
not a logical
but
problem.
the argument to say like there's something in the Bible and be like, oh, like I don't know why that's true. Okay, but then this though, this is a contradiction of God's nature, something that we're supposed to put. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is really bad, so I don't know if you can still hear me. But something we're supposed to put our trust in. Like you can't. How can you believe other things in the Bible if the nature of God in itself contradicts itself?
Yeah. I wouldn't say necessary. Like, I would say, like, obviously, I guess in some sense, like, at face value, we could see how it's some sort of a contradiction. But like, it wouldn't
I mean, I
necessarily be
don't
like a
see even
formal
beyond
contradiction.
face value. I don't see how it's not a contradiction. Like to see this suffering and then even needless suffering
Yeah. Well,
in the
for it to
world.
be a
It,
formal
yeah.
contradiction, right? All the premises logically can't be true at the same time. But with the existence of evil, it, 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 like, you could say it's apparently inconsistent with an all good, all powerful God. Uh, if no morally efficient reason exists for allowing evil, but this is ultimately just an assumption, right? It's not like a logical necessity. Uh, so it
I
really
guess
just
I don't.
based upon, like, us not having a, like, an assumption on us not having a reason, but ultimately it's
I
just an
guess I'm
argument
not
from
really
ignorance.
seeing what you're getting at. Like, yeah, could you explain that
Yeah,
again?
so for something to be like a formal contradiction within, like, an argument, all the premises logically cannot be true at the same time. You'd have to, like, deductively show that it's literally impossible. But with the case with the problem of evil and how there can be evil with an all good, all powerful, all loving God, it's really just, it's not something where it's like you logically show that it's literally impossible. It's just an assumption based upon, like, uh it just doesn't make sense to us. Um and there not being a like, God not giving us a morally sufficient reason, but ultimately it's just something that we don't know. It's not like an actual formal contradiction.
I mean, I feel like it is pretty logical. Like, would you agree that suffering is not good or
Yeah.
needless suffering?
Hmm.
So, and then if God is good and God has the power to not allow that suffering, that's, I feel that is a clear contradiction between whatever we see as his actions and his nature as a good God.
Not necessarily. It's not, once again, it's not like a formal contradiction. It's a parent contradiction. It's not a formal contradiction in the sense, like, if you put this down as like a premises or a syllogism, it's logically impossible. There is a possible way it could be done. Now it's, just in the sense, like, for us right now, we don't know, or it just doesn't make sense to us, right? But it's not like an
How is it
actual
not
contradiction.
impossible? I actually don't see how that's possible for it to be, for him to be good and have the power to remove this thing, but then not.
Yeah. So we a, if you don't know, like, a formal contradiction would be, for example, uh, like, there's P and Q. P is God is all good. Q, if we write it down like a syllogism, P God is all good. Q God is all powerful. R evil exists. It's saying that, like, P, Q, and R cannot all be true together. It's a claim of a logical contradiction, but you would have to demonstrate it, right? But ultimately it does, there's not like a way in which you can formulate it to show that it's actual impossible. It's just ultimately like speculative or an apparent contradiction. You kind of get what I mean.
I feel like you're kind of like going into the nuance of contradictions and trying to say that it's not. But I still, even under that example, I still don't see how it's possible for that to, like you're saying, I'm just like
So
making an assumption.
if
I'm
you
saying no, but it's illogical.
if
Yeah.
you take of it like I think like for example, premise one, like if God is omnipotent, all powerful, he can prevent evil. If God is
Yeah.
omnibenevolent, he wants to prevent evil, and then evil exists, therefore God does not exist, or God is a contradiction, right? It comes with an extra. This would be a contradiction if there's no possible like morally sufficient reason as to why God allows evil to exist, right? But that's like an extra assumption that's not something logically entailed by God's nature or by the premises.
How is it not? Sorry, there's a plane above, but how is it not logically
Well,
entailed?
within the argument, it doesn't include, for example, like premises as to why there absolutely is no possible morally sufficient reasoning, right?
I mean,
It's
what
just
is
an
the morally
unsaid
sufficient
assumption.
reason? There is none.
Ultimately, as we are aware of, I mean, I'll just grant that, like, as far as we know, there isn't we don't have a morally sufficient reason, but that doesn't mean there's no possible morally sufficient reasoning, and that gets into
So I
an
feel like
argument from ignorance.
that just doesn't make sense. Like there's a contradiction, apparent contradiction within God's nature, and then you're just saying, well, as humans, we don't have the capacity to think of that, so I'm just still
Well,
gonna
not
believe in this being.
it's a little more than that. It's like, as humans right now, we don't have the morally sufficient reasoning as to why this exists, but that doesn't mean there's not a possible morally sufficient reasoning as to why this is the case. It's the same thing as like in the 600s, right? They didn't have a scientific explanation as to why, like how lightning and thunder worked, so they ultimately just said God is real. This is kind of a inverse in saying we don't have a moral reason right now on why there can be evil if there's an all good, all powerful God, so therefore God doesn't exist or God's evil.
But it's like you see something, and you think it's not true, but then just being like, actually, I'm just gonna believe it's true because I don't have a solid reason to believe why not.
What do you mean?
Like I'm saying, just because you don't have a reason, like you could see
Well,
a
ultimately
contradiction.
it leads into, it's not like just baseless that this God exists and you're like baselessly and just ignoring that. Like I can deductively prove God exists by necessity, and there is this first cause that is all loving, all powerful, all good, by necessity, and then ultimately
But
this
there's so
argument
many.
doesn't debunk it,
Yeah,
because it's just based on the fact that we don't have a morally sufficient reasoning now. It's
no, my
not based on
argument is
showing
not
that
that.
it's impossible for there to be a morally
My
sufficient
argument is
reason.
not that God doesn't exist, but you're saying, well, because God exists, and then the Bible says God is all good and all powerful, that He must be.
Well,
But
not that. It's like, because you can deductively prove that a conscious, all good, all loving, all powerful being exists, that
how can you deductively prove that it's all good and all powerful?
you
I don't
for
understand what you mean.
I use a variant of the argument for motion. I can run you through the premises if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Premise 1: things in the universe are in motion. Motion meaning change. Premise 2: nothing moves itself. Premise 3: a chain of movers can't go on infinitely in a per se causal chain. Premise 4: therefore there must be a first mover that isn't moved by anything else. Premise 5: this first mover is purely actual, the source of all motion and change. Premise 6: whatever is purely actual acts not by necessity alone but by intrinsic power. Premise 7: only a conscious being, one with intellect and will, can originate motion from itself without being moved by another, because it does not act by compulsion or external causation. And premise 8: therefore the first mover must be a conscious. It initiates all motion not by being moved but by willing. And the conclusion is this conscious first mover that's fully actualized is what we call God, or what we understand as God.
All these premises just prove that God exists, but not that He's good.
Well, within the syllogism includes that he would have to be purely actual. Now, like, you can get into justifying why that would have to be the case. Uh, like as with all these
I think
premises, they're statements with like a log. If you agree with the premises, the conclusion is a necessary conclusion. Now you get into like if you're arguing it, you get into justifying the premises that person doesn't agree with, and so on.
I mean, I don't think there's any way that I can see that it's a necessary conclusion that because God exists under those premises, which I agree with, that he is all good. Especially when I'm saying we can see something in our world that is the opposite of good.
Well,
And that could have been
yeah.
removed
So
with
the
his
fully
talent.
actualized parts means it's like it's perfect. So it has the omni attributes, all powerful, etc. It has no potential, which means like there is no room to improve or to get better, right? It's the peak, which would include
I
being
mean,
all good, being perfect, all
well,
loving.
even under that premise, that just shows that God has the ability to do good, but that doesn't even speak to his nature of being all
Well,
good.
that
So,
would be his nature. If he could do, if he wasn't all good, then he would have potential. He wouldn't be the first cause. If he could do evil,
Harry,
but he's all good, then it would be like logically impossible and violates things like the ontological principle.
you're saying because he can do good, he's all good?
No, the art because the first cause would by necessity have to be purely actuality, which would include being all good. He's all good.
How would by necessity he have to be all good in order for him to be good and create the world? I don't understand.
Yeah. So when we're talking about the first cause, right? If there were potential within him, there's something called PSR. That's the principle of sufficient reasoning. It basically states that everything that exists has a sufficient reasoning as to why it exists that way versus existing in another way, right? If there were, if it did have potential to change, if it wasn't fully actualized, there would need to be a sufficient reasoning as to explain why the potentiality exists. Assuming there is, let's say X is the sufficient reasoning, right? Firstly, how do I put this? That like thing must be purely actual, because only what is fully actual has no need for an external cause or internal
Yeah, I'm not
instability,
disagreeing
unrealized
that he's
aspects that need
yeah.
explanation, right? So the ultimate explanation would have to be fully actualized. And since there has to be a first cause that is self-sufficient, ultimately that first cause would have to be
I'm
fully
not
actualized.
I understand. You're going over how he's the first cause and omnipotent. Like I understand
Well,
that and I
what
agree with that. I just
if he had potential, if he wasn't perfect, then that explanation ultimately would have to be fully actualized. There couldn't be an infinite regressive explanation.
I don't see I guess I just don't see how you're jumping from he has to be perfect in order for him to create the world and all these things and be omnipotent.
Well, yeah. So once again, if he wasn't perfect, he would have potential, which would need an explanation, and ultimately there has to be a like single explanation. There can't be just an infinite amount of explanations uh, that explain, so on forever. And for that, for find like that first explanation to be that like final or ultimate source explanation, it would have to be fully actualized. It would have to be perfect. Otherwise, it would need a because it has no external cause or reason. If it wasn't, then it would need a reason, and so on. Right? It leads into an infinite regress.
I'm like I see your logic, but I just feel like that's an intellectual jump just to say it. I don't know. But then again, we all started this from like the problem of suffering, which I feel like I don't know, maybe you've addressed it, but not in a way that I feel is logical or that follows any like conclusion. I feel like you're just tying it back to the Bible and the fact that as humans, we just can't understand.
Yeah. Well, tying back to the Bible, right? ultimately, if with deductively proving that this being exists by necessity, the argument, even in its core, that God, that this is a supposed contradiction, doesn't follow, right? It's just not. It doesn't, because then you're rejecting something that necessarily exists.
How does it necessarily exist that he's good? Like, I feel like we went through this step by step. Like, he's all good, he's all powerful.
Well, I
Suffering is not
summarized
good.
like 8 steps.
Oh, okay.
Like,
But
what were you
that
saying?
train of thought, can you address that? That, like, he's powerful and he can change this, but he doesn't.
Yeah, well, as to the reason why, like, that's just what we call an epistemic limitation.
Like, you can't keep saying that, but you can't just be like, oh, we don't understand, but let's still just believe in everything else in this religion, even though the foundational part of the religion, we see this contradiction or something that, like, clearly
That
is,
would hold
yeah.
weight if you couldn't prove God, right? Like, if you're saying God exists without a proof, and then this
What?
argument, like the argument of
It still
evil or
holds weight.
something, comes about, then you would be like just believing in God
reason
because you
why-
believe in God baselessly. But since you
No, the reason
since you
why
can
it's pertinent-
deductively like
yeah,
prove
go ahead.
God and He is necessary, He has these attributes, then there has to be an explanation, and the argument basically just goes
But you're
about
saying
saying, and
because oh, sorry, you're saying because God exists that he must be good, because he exists. But you realize there's so many religions that state that there is God, but it doesn't carry these attributes. And
yeah,
that's
but
the problem.
well, their God would have to carry these attributes. So like the religions that could qualify would have to have a God with those attributes by necessity. So it's
Alright, I
it's
guess
not
I'm
like
not
a
really
problem with
seeing,
just this religion. It's every religion, because even if we move to, like, for example, Islam or Judaism, right? They still have a God, they still have these attributes, and evil still exists, right? So the classical, like, a problem of evil still would apply to them, but ultimately that argument just includes an extra assumption that there is no possibly morally sufficient reasoning. You would have to justify and prove that.
Alright, I have to go, but I really appreciate this conversation. Thanks for being very calm and not, like,
Of course.
aggressive or anything. I appreciate you
Of course.
explaining
Appreciate it.
Alright,
God
have a
bless.
good live. Yeah.
All right, we got Tyrone coming up.
Oh
What's up?
man, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Good. I guess I like to take the position that only the Father is God. I base this off of the very clear teachings of Jesus, the theology of Jesus, essentially that the Father is the God of the Jews. That's John 8:54. The Father is the only true God, as you're familiar with, and that the Father is your God and my God, His God, and our God. And so, basically, Jesus reserves the term God exclusively for the Father. That's both in the Gospels and in the Revelation.
What fact do you want to listen to?
Beg your pardon?
Sorry, someone was typing. Can you fix your echo? Like, what you have to do is you have to, like, fully close out of the TikTok app, like swipe out of it, and then just open it back up, and just rejoin the live. I'll let you right back up.
Hold on, it's my Bluetooth device. I need to jump out, and I'll disconnect it here in a second.
Okay. Okay.
But do you want to respond while I'm setting it up?
I'll wait for you. That since God canonically can change our actions, but refuses to show that He is not all good. What do you mean by change our actions? when we do something he doesn't like, he can change what we do. We like when we for the Orthodox Church, right? We would hold that he changes our actions not like by overriding our will or controlling us, but by like through like influencing and cooperation, right? Like desires, thoughts, and that type of thing. Yeah.
Hey, Bug. It's Austin. How you doing?
Doing good.
Am I still echoing?
No, you're all good.
All right, very cool. Hey, sorry, apologize. I actually have to run, so maybe we'll catch up another time.
All right. God bless.
Bye.
If you guys disagree with the background or have any questions, request up as guest. All right, we got some more people coming up. Let's see. D1.
What's up?
What's up?
How you doing?
Doing good. What you want to talk about? What you want to talk about, Marcus?
How are you able to prove that God exists?
Argument for motion. Or variant of it.
What?
A variant of the argument for motion.
What does that mean?
I mean, just I prove God deductively through logic,
Okay.
metaphysics.
I would like you further on that. Can you do that?
Yeah, I got you. I'll run you through the premises. Premise 1, things in the universe are in motion. Motion meaning change. Premise 2, nothing moves itself. Premise 3, a chain of movers can't go on infinitely in a per se causal chain. Premise 4, therefore there must be a first mover that isn't moved by anything else. Premise 5, the first mover is pure actuality. Do you have a problem?
Just because something's moving doesn't mean there has to be something that moved it in space. That's not how space works.
No, like if there is motion, nothing can move itself, and there can't be an infinite amount of movers, then there must be a first source that isn't moved by anything else.
The universe is ever expanding, and the things inside of the universe is expanding with it, meaning it's moving with the universe.
How would that like debunk what those 4 premises say?
Meaning, what you said, you were saying that something is moving the planets or anything in the universe, but that's not how that works. Anything in the universe is just in the ever-expanding universe.
You cut out. What'd you say?
I'm sorry, which part did I cut out at?
You said like things in the universe are moving because or something like that, and then you cut out.
Okay. I'll just restate the statement, I guess.
Yeah.
What you said was something must move those objects in the universe for them to be moving, but that's not true. Things inside of the universe is moving with the universe, because as the universe expands, everything gets farther apart, so they move with the universe.
Yeah, but how would that mean? Like, how would that debunk the first 4 premises? Or like, what's being said?
Because you said that something must be moving those when that's not what's happening.
Okay, is there a cause for that motion?
Big Bang, I guess. That would be a cause for it.
So there's a reason as to why it's moving. There's a cause. Something that
it's moving with the universe because the universe is expanding constantly.
Okay, so the universe would be actualizing everything else to move with it.
Yes.
Okay, so then that doesn't debunk the premises. It would it
Yes,
fit?
it does.
How would that
Because
debunk
you're saying that some being is moving everything in the universe.
No,
But
no.
that's what you said. Yes.
No, we haven't even finished the argument. The argument is that there's a first cause.
That is exactly what you said.
The argument is that that there's a first cause that is actualized, fully actualized. That's the source of causal power that sustains the per se causal chain, because a per se causal chain can't have an infinite regress. It needs to
Big
get its
Bang.
causal power. That's not saying that there's an actual being moving and moving every single thing. It's just that there's an actual being that gives the causal power, i.e., for example, as you said, the universe is actualized and expanding, and because the universe is expanding, it's actualizing everything else to expand with it. The first cause, like let's say there's X, Y, and Z before that the universe that are all actualizing each other to actualize the universe. Ultimately, there's A, which would be the first cause that's starting with the first thing that's in motion, or the first cause actualizing it, and then that goes down the causal chain, a per se causal chain. It doesn't. The
What you're
universe
saying,
expanding
there must be
doesn't
something
attack
that
that argument.
started it.
Yeah.
What
And
you're
sustains it.
saying, there must be something that started it.
Yeah,
and
sustains
that
it.
argument that says the Big Bang.
Well,
Because that's what started it.
Does the Big Bang still exist?
Yes. The ever expanding universe means that the Big Bang still exists.
Okay. So like the
how that
expanding
works.
universe would be like the first cause actualizing everything else.
Technically, no.
Then it couldn't be the Big Bang.
That's not what that means, though.
Well, if you're saying the Big Bang's the first cause, it's like the source of causal power, and it's actualizing, like the start of the per se causal chain, so that chain goes on and has causal power. But then you're saying it's not. The Big Bang's not.
What I
doing
said
that.
was the Big Bang made everything, and it continuously is still expanding the universe, and everything is moving with it.
Okay. Well, I mean, just to start, the Big Bang couldn't be the first cause because the first cause would have to be conscious.
That's not.
Yeah. So
it wouldn't have to be.
with a non-conscious first cause, there's two ways that in which it could work. It's either really only one way, but it's either it's eternally creating, by necessity, out of its nature, it's just always actualizing, or it's not actualizing and something else, like it started off not actualizing and something else like actualized it so that it could start actualizing, right? If there's something else that actualizes it so it can start actualizing, then it's not the first cause. For the second one, right, where it's acting by necessity, if it produces a non-necessary effect without being determined to do so by anything else, i.e., in the sense, then it must have to start with the first thing, then it must have the ability to freely direct power towards an outcome, which would require intellect and will. So like the act must come be like a deliberate act from within its nature, which would be something that would require will and intellect.
It doesn't require will and intellect, though.
The ability to freely direct and deliberate an outcome would require will.
Everything is moving in different directions all around you: north, south, southeast, east, west. Everything in the universe is moving in every direction.
How would that debunk
the
what I
universe
said?
is expanding?
And
that debunks what you just said.
how does that debunk what I
You're
just
saying
said?
you're saying that it needs something to propel it when it doesn't. You're saying that there needs to be something that has an intellect to propel it when that's simply not true.
No, I didn't say that there has to be something with. I said the
Yes.
first cause, the start of the per se causal chain would have to have intellect.
That's what I said.
No, you just said something would have to have intellect to propel it. You could have causes in the per se causal chain that don't have intellect that propel something. For example, like
That what you just said just proves my point.
how does that prove your point?
Because what I said, it doesn't need to have something to propel it.
Things within a per se causal chain, not the first cause. Think
The first
like
cause-
other effects, for example, like let's say first cause is effect like cause A, and then we're at cause Z, right? Cause G and H and M, and so on don't need to have intellect and will to be causes or actualize something, but cause A would still need to have will and intellect to actualize something, because there's a non-necessary effect in which that would necessitate an ability to freely direct power or outcome from one or another.
Something does not need something. Something does not need an intellect. Are formed. How stars are formed.
You cut out again.
Something does not need. It does not need something to start something. It does not need an intellect to start it.
It doesn't need why? Like with what I said, right? What like do you have like a rebuttal to what I said outside of just saying it doesn't need to?
Well, how planets are formed, or how asteroids are formed, you could say that because it's just gravity, perpetual motion. But how gravity works in general disproves it.
What do you mean? Like, how would gravity
Because-
disprove what I said?
Because in the Bible it says the Earth is about 6,000 years.
How is this
When-
relevant to what we're talking about?
Well, would you let me
I
finish?
asked you for your rebuttal to what I said, which was about how it would need to be conscious and it can't be a non-conscious being, and my reasoning for that, and you're bringing up the age of the Earth according to the Bible.
Well, if you let me finish, then I can explain it.
Okay, so
Because that is
bringing up the
relevant.
age of the Earth according to the Bible is going to debunk my justification as to why it can't be a non-conscious being.
Yes,
Okay.
you're not letting me explain it.
Go for it then.
How gravity works, everything pulls into something, pulls into a center of it. And that's how planets are formed, because cosmic dust, cosmic particles, they form into each other because of gravity pulls them into each other. And that eventually forms meteors, asteroids, then eventually planets. But that also does take millions of years, possibly billions.
Okay.
And that alone makes religion illogical.
How does that disprove my justification and reasoning as to why it can't be a non-conscious being?
Because that in itself doesn't need a conscious being. That doesn't use a conscious being.
Is that the first cause? No. What I said
Would be the first
specifically,
cause of our-
I specifically said the first cause would need to be a conscious being. Not that I literally even told you that the other parts of the first of a per se causal chain wouldn't need to be conscious outside of the first cause. And you're giving me
First
examples
cause was
like I'm
Earth.
assuming, I'm hoping you're giving me examples in a per se causal chain of things outside of the first cause that are non-conscious, which I agreed with.
But
Like, this doesn't
Earth was
address what I said at
first
all.
thing formed. Yes, it does.
Okay, so like, does the fact that gravity and this process form planets means that the first cause is non-conscious for everything?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the first cause? Like, how is that proof that the first cause is non-conscious? I hope you know gravity isn't the first cause.
It's not.
Okay, so then you're not even bringing up the first cause in this argument on why the first cause would have to be non-conscious.
What makes it? What makes something need a cause from intellect, though? That in itself doesn't make sense.
So, if something produces a non-necessary effect, meaning like a contingent effect, a temporal effect, and it's acts by necessity, meaning it's producing the same effect, it's constantly, like, eternally creating, without being determined to do so by anything else, then it must have the ability to freely direct its power towards one outcome rather than another, which would require intellect, meaning like to recognize alternatives, and will, which would mean to choose among them.
That doesn't require intellect, though. That doesn't require intellect.
Okay,
For something to
initiating
start,
a
it does not
contingent
require
effect without being
intellect.
caused to do so requires self-determination. Like, it does. A non-conscious entity who is eternally creating, right? Like fully actualizing eternally. That's then, despite the fact that it's creating eternally, which would lead to an eternal effect, is somehow creating temporal contingent effects that are non-necessary, despite the fact that it's creating and actualizing eternally and necessarily, would require some explanation and reasoning or cause as to why that's the case. Would you agree with that?
Yes, but that still does not prove how it needs an intellect. It needs something that has intellectual.
Outside, so, and this reason would have to be within itself, right? Otherwise, if it requires a cause outside of itself, then it's not the first cause.
It is the first cause. But you're
So if the
but
first
you were
cause
saying
requires a
something-
cause outside of itself to cause, it's still the first cause?
You are saying that it needs something else to act upon it.
No,
When
I'm saying if
that's
it
not
does,
how
if you're
it
taking
works.
that scenario where it needs something else outside of itself to act upon it, then it would no longer be the first cause. But I'm saying in this scenario where it doesn't, because it's the first cause, it would need to have a reason within itself, or the ability within itself to create temporal effects when it's actualizing eternally by necessity. To be able to
And how
do
does
that,
prove that it needs something
would
intellect?
would require self-determination or the ability to.
No, it doesn't.
Why wouldn't it? Okay, so then how would it be able to do that?
Require something to be. How would it be able to do that?
Mhm.
Because this is hard to explain. Because obviously you're not gonna take into effect of what it is. How do I explain this? One thing does not need another thing to happen. It does not need another thing to act upon it to happen.
So like it can just do things without a reason. Yeah. By the
Yes,
way, can you
things
fix your
can-
mic? What's going on with that?
There's nothing wrong with my microphone.
It just keeps like a. Like, are you moving? Tapping against it?
Oh, that's my pop socket. My bad.
Yeah. Okay, so is there a? You're saying there wouldn't need to be a reason as to like why it can do this?
There doesn't need to be a reason for another. Something does not need to have an outside reason as to something happened.
Okay, so like you're denying PSR,
PSR, explain.
the principle of sufficient reasoning.
That is how we interpret the Earth as of the current moment. Or that's how we could interpret what's happening as of the current moment, not as what happened billions of years ago.
PSR applies to not just the current moment, but every reason.
Implies to the current
PSR
moment.
states that there's a sufficient reasoning. Everything has a sufficient reasoning as to why it exists a certain way and not in another way. if there's no reason why it exists rather than not, or exists in this certain way, or does this thing in a certain way rather than not, then there's nothing that makes its existence more intelligible than non-existence, which would then lead into like violating the law of non-contradiction and just becoming completely irrational.
It's irrational to think that something needs a reason to happen.
Yeah, so if there is no
Something does not
reason,
need a reason to
if there
happen.
is no sufficient reason as to why something that's eternally a non-conscious thing that is eternally creating automatically by necessity is then creating something that temporally exists, or is able to temporally create something that temporally exists without will or intellect, then you're violating PSR.
No, it's not.
So
PSR
saying that
has
there
possessive
isn't a sufficient reason as to why this exists, when principle of sufficient reasoning says that there's everything has a sufficient reason as to why it exists, that's not violating PSR?
The universe does not need a reason to exist.
So you deny PSR?
No. The universe does not need a reason to exist.
To say
The
that
things
something's a
inside
brute
of the
fact
universe-
would then mean that would then violate PSR.
the things inside of the universe has reasons to exist, but that's not an intellectual reasoning. That is just how things have gone out.
You do know that by saying that there's no reason as to, for example, like why this non-conscious being is creating by necessity.
It's not a being. It's not a being. There's
A
no
being
being.
just means
There's no higher
a state
being.
of
There's not higher.
existence.
There may be a higher being. We don't know.
Okay, so being just means state of
The
existence.
state of existence.
So this thing doesn't exist then, if it's not a being.
A being means. A being means.
The universe is a
something
being.
that is
It has
able
its
to
state of
think.
existence.
The universe is a thing, not a being. A being means it has.
Okay, so like within like philosophy in this context, being would be defined as a state of existence, or something's state of existence. If you're saying that the universe has no being, then it has no state of existence, which means it doesn't exist.
That's not what that means. I've already explained how that's not what that means.
That's not what being means. Okay, well, I'll grant that. Can I, if I define, let's say if I define being that way, then would something need to be a being to exist?
A being is something that is living.
Yeah. If I define being as state of existence, or something state of existence, then would everything that exists need to have a being, a state of existence?
No.
Okay, so if
Everything that exists does not need a
something
being as to why
something
it
can
exists.
exist without existing.
That's not what that means. You are using being in a wrong term.
Okay, so I'm using being in this, and I defined it for you. I'm using being as state of existence, or something state of existence.
That's not what that means, though.
It doesn't
simply
matter.
not
In fact, even for this, within logic and argumentation, even with the dictionary, it says it's wrong, which I'm sure like Webster's would say it's wrong, but within philosophy, that's how it's defined. It doesn't matter. I can define a word a specific way as long as I stay consistent to that terminology. I could define, for example, X for this in this example to say X is something state of existence, or a state of existence. If something doesn't have X, then it exists, then it doesn't exist. It's a contradiction. I can define I can define words to describe something, or in a certain way, as long as I stay consistent to that terminology.
Not how this works.
How is that not how this works? What's like the logical error in that? Oh, he left. Well, okay, Facts, you can come up. I mean, you can remain undefeated and come cook me. If you guys disagree with the background or have any questions, request up as guests. See what y'all are saying. That's what Big Bang Theory was formulated to give a sufficient reason for the causing universe from the theological ends. Exactly. No way. I don't know, dude. That's also something a lot of people don't know. Like, there's not a it's not illogical at all to define a word a specific way to describe something. For example, being as a state of existence, and then use that within an argument. Like, that's how words were invented. They either created words, or for example, if you read like classical works, and those types of things, like logic or God or etc., are defined certain ways in that context. For example, like person within classical theism is defined as something which is different than what the Webster's dictionary today would define person. It's within a context. As long as you stay consistent with that definition, so you don't like start creating equivocation fallacies, there's not a logical error at all. What? No, I don't debate Catholics. With your premise, you still haven't proved. Wait, Mike, are you talking to me? By the way, Mike, do you want to come up? I have all these people talking crap in the comments. They don't want to come up. Here we go.
Hello.
What's up?
No, it's getting dark. It's almost 10:30 here in Sweden, so.
There you go. Were you saying you agree with my premises?
No, like I said, even if I do agree with your premises, you still haven't proven your God.
Well, I mean, the purpose of the argument is just to prove a God, not like specifically the Orthodox Christian God.
Yeah, but you're saying in your prompt that Jesus is God, and you can prove God easily, and you're using those arguments and premises to prove the God, but you haven't proven your God.
Yeah, the purpose of the argument I'm running is not to prove God, is not to prove the Christian God specifically, or a specific God. It's just to prove
But
God.
if you say in your prompt that Jesus is God, and then you
Yeah,
prove
but that's
God,
just a different scenario. Like, that's like saying debate when I'm debating Islam and Jehovah's Witness, I'm disproving their God or something like that. They're different prompts, separate prompts.
Okay, so you're basically telling me that you are proving my God real then.
I'm proving a God real, not a specific God.
Yeah, so the God you're proving can just as easily be Odin.
I mean, if he fills the necessary attributes, yeah.
Yeah?
Any
Okay.
God that qualifies with it, but I'm just proving a God, not a specific one.
Okay, but how would you then prove to me that Jesus is God and not Odin?
I would go into like proving, like going into like how it's within recorded human history and what we know about human psyche, and psychologically, it's not typical of humans to die for a lie they themselves made up. And since the eyewitnesses of Christ that claimed that he resurrected and did these things would have been dying for a lie, like it would put like truth to their claims.
You do understand that you're talking to a person from a country where over multiple thousands of people died for their faith when
That's not
Christianity
the same
came here,
example.
right?
I'm saying a human dying for a lie they themselves made up, not someone dying for what they believe in. But like, for example,
But
with
we
the
have several
apostles,
people
if they were
from
lying,
then.
they would be making up a lie and then dying for it. It's not just
Yeah,
like
but we have
dying for
several
like I
people-
believe in Allah and then I die for it. It's like, for example, me making up a lie like I saw Allah, and he spoke to me and said he's real, and then I died for it.
You do understand that we have several hundred people in historical facts that died claiming they have met one or several of our gods.
Okay, but are they dying for, like, you would have to show that they're dying for that claim.
The Christians came and said basically, either you become Christian or we unalive you. and they still choose to be unalived. So I would say, yeah, they claim that they have met and talked with our gods. Then they refuse to become Christians, and the Christians unalive them.
I mean, like,
So with that
if you give like
argument-
recorded examples of that, sure.
The sacking of Varnhem, for instance, the sacking of temple in Uppsala.
Yeah, like, do you have documents for that, or like,
Yes.
just
You
give
do
me the
understand
ones
you're
that, like,
debating in
for
North Pagan,
example,
right?
like, where someone was claiming that they saw their god, and then they were killed for that belief, like for that lie.
Yeah, if they claim they have spoken to our gods, like for instance Moses, he spoke to a bush, and then he met him on a mountain, I think. I was only a Christian for 15 years, then I kind of, moved away from that, the first 15 years of my life. So I'm a little bit hazy on my Christian history here. But we have several people that, spoke to the gods, claimed they met the gods, worked with the gods. And then Christianity came and said, oh, you need to abandon your faith. And they said no. And then they were unaligned for that.
I mean, if you can
Why
give
would they-
documentation of them dying for that lie, I mean, that would work.
Do you know how Christianity is spread through the Nordics?
Yes. I'm
Then
still
you
waiting for
know
like the
we have
documentation,
historical-
like justifying these claims and justifying like an example.
So, if you knew how it spread, then you know people were unalived because they didn't conform to the Christian faith, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that evidence enough?
No. It would be evidence, for example, like if you showed like a recorded documentation, for example, like a guy named Joe said that like the Christians were going to kill him unless he became Christian and denounces God, and he's like, I saw my God, I spoke to him face to face, your God's false or something, like, and then he died for that, then I would give validity to his claim.
Okay.
I would say so. Yeah.
Can you give me a counter then? Any? Because the only one I know that has been historically proven is Paul, of the apostles.
That historically died.
Yeah, like proven from other sources than the Holy Book, that he died for this quote unquote lie he would have made up and then died for.
Okay.
Like, I'm checking if I can give you a source, a good source, because these are tellings that have been told to me, and I'm trying to find the historical proven sources that are not in Swedish. But it goes the same way, because all I know is of Paul, and then I know there was a discussion about I think it's Thomas in English. It's not in Swedish, but I hope
Thomas.
you understand it.
What about him?
Yeah, but isn't Paul the only one that has other historical facts than just Christianity that proves that he was unalive to what he believed in?
James, for example, like James's death is recorded and like by Josephus in his Antiquities, and then Eusebius quotes Hegesippus talking about him dying. You have Jerome for Peter, like, or Eusebius quotes Origen talking about Peter being crucified with his head upside down. In Rome, Jerome talks about.
But wasn't Peter crucified in Greece though?
No.
Where was he crucified? Because from what we're being told up here, he was crucified in Greece, and they didn't do crucifixions.
What do you mean?
That was away from the
who's
Romans.
saying that he was crucified in Greece?
I'm not saying crucified. I'm saying he was unalived in Greece.
Who's saying
And they
that?
didn't do crucifixions. My former pastor when I was 14.
I mean, if you could provide historical documentation where they're saying that, but from what we have historically documented,
So I
they
shouldn't
say
trust the word of the church?
the word. what as if they're infallible, like that specific pastor. No, I wouldn't even say that he's part of the infallible church to begin with. He was
The
Protestant. Right?
infallible church. What do you mean by that?
We affirm that Christ, according to the scriptures, established an infallible church. And that church is the Orthodox Church. Ultimately, the two contenders are the Catholic or Orthodox Church.
Greek or Russian Orthodox?
They're the same thing.
Or Eastern, I think it's called.
Yeah, Eastern Orthodox.
Okay. Is there a variation between the Greek? Sorry, I have so many questions. I'm still trying to learn all of this.
Yeah.
Is there a distinction between the Greek Orthodox and the Eastern one?
No, like they're like the Greek, Russian, Romanian, like those are all, they're like patriarchs, and they're all within Eastern Orthodoxy. Like they're all Eastern
cool.
Orthodox. Yeah.
So, the one I grew up with, Sweden is Protestant, so that would be a fallible church. Oh yeah, fallible.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And
English
even
is not
within
my-
that, like for example, we don't take like my priest, right? Just because he says something, that doesn't mean it's infallible. So like even if your church was like Eastern Orthodox, just because your pastor says something doesn't mean it's infallible.
So who has the authority to tell me
Yeah.
what's truth and what's not truth in the Bible?
Yeah.
Or what's right
what
and wrong?
what's infallible is what the church deems infallible. So like through this synods and ecumenical councils, what they say is dogmatic, meaning like meaning it's like fully true, you have to believe it, that's infallible.
But if you have two, like, okay, I'm just gonna go with a hypothetical here. I don't know if it works, but if a priest, I hope you call them priest. Otherwise, please correct me. If a priest in Russia says Russia is God's given people right now, and a priest in Greece says the Greeks are the God's given people right now, which one is correct?
I mean, they just because they say something doesn't mean they're correct.
No, but which one is more correct
I don't
according
know.
to
There's
the
not.
Holy Scripture?
I would say there's not enough information for that. I mean, I would say like, I wouldn't. I would say that the Eastern Orthodox as a whole is correct, and those are in like the Eastern Orthodox, like who's in communion with them, they are correct overall.
Do you see why, for me as a non-Christian, that explanation does not make sense? If two people that represent your church,
well, the only
can say
infallible
two
thing is what
absolutely
the
different
church
things.
says is infallible. So if what they're saying goes against what the church says is infallible, then they're wrong. And if they're both in communion, right, and they're saying only them is correct, then that goes against what the church teaches.
Okay, but who has the authority? Oh, sorry, wait, I'm going to. Sorry, I didn't want to cough your ear off.
All good.
Wait. I have a little fur ball at home that decided that he wanted me to pet him, and then there is fur everywhere. Anyway, like, who has the absolute authority to tell, like, this is right and wrong in the Eastern Orthodox Church?
The church as a whole. So like when we go to synod, when we have synods and like things that are determined dogmatic, the church, the leaders of the church, like patriarchs and the bishops, come together and make a decision, and like as a whole, and that's what's determined as dogmatic. It's not like just a specific individual, like for example, Catholicism has like the Pope, those types of things. It's not just a specific individual that's it because they said something it's correct or it's infallible.
But doesn't that mean then that you said the bishops, they can get their personal feelings into what's right and wrong and go against what others believe in the church is right?
Within like at a synod where they're trying to determine something's infallible?
Yeah.
Ultimately, like the ultimate decision of the synod on determining what's infallible is an infallible decision and fully true because of what Christ promised us that.
Okay, sorry. Like I'm learning so much right now because this is rare for me to speak to an Eastern Orthodox. So I'm just going to give you an hypothetical. Say that everyone in your faith wants to wear blue pants, and then you have. Did you call it Sinna? And then the bishops have a. Did you say Sinna or
Synod.
Am I Synod? Yeah. And then the bishops gets to that one and say, and all the bishop thinks blue pants are ugly, so they decide no, you can not have blue pants. Do you need to follow that rule then?
That we can't have blue pants? If it's
Yeah.
dogmatic, yeah.
Do you understand why, for me as a non-Eastern Orthodox, this does not make sense?
Not really. Like that, something like that wouldn't happen because the decisions are made in accordance to, for example, like what the scriptures teach us. So the scriptures don't teach us that we can't wear blue pants. So the decision that it's infallible, that like an infallible decision that we can't wear blue pants would never happen.
Okay, so the blue pants was a very stupid example of me. Like, it was just like putting somewhere in there because I don't want to, offend anyone with some real examples because, we have some really hot topics that we could discuss.
So good.
But I refuse not to do that because that will be me infringing on your faith and, questioning stuff that I'm not supposed to question.
I mean, you could question whatever up here of mine.
Yeah, but I wouldn't feel good with that because my religion tells me to, let people have their faith, let people follow their rules as long as they don't try to, step in my faith. So I wouldn't be okay with it. So the blue pants was, I was just trying to fill that void with something. But
yeah.
Do you understand that if this were to be a bigger moral thing that could impact, half of the followers of that church, and you have how many bishops do you have?
No clue off the top of my head.
Is it like 2, 5, 10, 20? 200?
I have no clue.
Okay, but say for a fact that we're just gonna say something that is a moral hot potato. I hope that works. So a moral hot potato, and humans are not infallible.
Mm-hmm.
So the bishop sits down with their viewpoint and how they feel about the subject, and they use the holy text to get their will through. Wouldn't that create a problem then? How do you know that these bishops act on?
Because
I don't want to say good morality.
That's what Christ promises us. That's what the Bible. That's God's promise to us.
But how do we know?
I mean, that would go into like the scriptures being true. So I'd go back to like what we were talking about originally.
Okay, so is there something in the scriptures right now that you feel that the bishops has not fulfilled?
No, I don't think there's anything that has been made dogmatic that goes against the scriptures.
Okay, because I asked you a question before in the chat about Genesis 11, and I kind of want to know how you see upon that and how it's been decided in your church how that worked. Because for me, that proves that God isn't all good.
Genesis 11 does?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because what Genesis 11 proves for me is that if we do something God doesn't like, he will go and change our actions.
Yeah. I mean, what specific, what we, with Genesis 11, right? What we hold to is that God can influence just within the Bible in general. God doesn't literally change your actions, but he can influence you, lead you down the right path, influence your desires and stuff, but he doesn't override your will or control you.
But in Genesis 11, he does.
What specific power?
He changes our language and scattered us all over the earth because we wanted to build a tower and he said nah. That I would say infringes first on our free will and I'm not even going to go into the argument if we have free will or not, but it infringes on what we wanted to do. He didn't want us to do it, so he comes down, he changes our language, and he scatters us all through the earth, all over the earth. I can't actually remember what exactly said, but I can bring it up if you want me to.
Yeah. He doesn't like change their will. Like their desire to build he doesn't change that desire. He changes like their environment, i.e. like their language. Versus like he's not controlling their will or desire. It's not like he's just going into them and changing their will so that like they no longer want to build anymore. All he's doing is changing their environment, like i.e. creating language, like the languages, to stop them from being able to communicate and build. But their actual like free will is not being changed.
If he changes our languages, that's just the first part though. If he changes our languages so we can't build, isn't that changing our actions? Isn't speaking an action?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like changing like languages would be changing an action.
Yeah, so if you and I decides that we want to do something that is against the rules in the Bible, any rule, we can go back to, the 10 Commandments. I can't remember which number it is, but you shall not unalive.
Yeah, but I mean, that's different. With the scenario, like changing actions isn't the same as will. Like will would be your desire or intent to do something. Actions would be what you actually do.
Yeah, but if we were to decide that we're going to perform this action, God could change so we can't understand each other and we can't no longer do that.
Yeah, but that's not changing our will. That's changing our that's changing an action.
But this is why I didn't want to go into the free will stuff, because I know this is not where I want to go. I just want to prove to you that with two things he changes our actions. The first one is language. The second one is he spreads us all over the world to make sure that we can't build. So even if we had the desire to build this tower, we couldn't because he moved us all over the world. Because that is what the passage says.
Say that again?
So he's hindering us from doing an action.
Yeah.
And therefore changing our actions.
He changes action, yeah.
Yeah. So if he can change our actions when we do something that he doesn't want us to do, that means he can do it for other things we do that he didn't want us to do, but he refused to. Therefore, from my point of view, he's not all good, because there is a lot of things he could have stopped by doing the same thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we talk about free will, like within the biblical...
But I'm not talking about free will.
Okay. Well, the changing your actions, wouldn't be a change in will. Like changing the language we speak isn't a change in their will. Like their desire,
yeah, but we
their
are not
will
talking
being
about
like
will here. We're talking about actions.
Yeah, changing in the actions doesn't change their will or violate free will or anything like that.
No. And this is why, again, I am not here to discuss free will. I am here to talk about when we do an action he doesn't like, he can change it.
Yeah.
Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are multiple things through recorded history that both you and I can agree on. This is recorded history. This actually happened, where he could have done the same thing. Not change their free will, which is horrible itself, But he could have gone in and be like, yep, now you can't talk to each other, so you can't do this specific thing that I don't want you to do. And then I'm going to move you 3 over to Brazil, and I'm going to move you 3 over to Greenland, and you 6 over to Russia, and you 12 over to Japan. So you can't do this action that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Still nothing about the will, but he could have done that, right?
Yeah.
And since he didn't do that, and he let this horrible thing happen, that is, from my point of view, proof that either he wanted it to happen, or he didn't care enough, so he didn't stop it. And therefore he's not good in my eyes.
I mean, ultimately, like, as to why God didn't change, like, do external intervention and those types of things to prevent like an outcome like that is just an epistemic limitation, right? We don't know. We're not God. But I mean, that it doesn't mean that he's therefore evil or bad necessarily.
But again, yeah, I do agree, we are not God. But we have something canonically that he does in the Holy Book where he thinks, I don't want them to do this, so I'm going to change their actions.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, when he doesn't do the same thing when we do other stupid actions, he either doesn't care enough to actually check in what we're doing, or he thought this was nothing wrong what we do. What we do.
The thing with this is like the idea of him being evil because of this is just based on like the idea that there isn't a possible explanation like for morally why he'd do this, but we also like knowing that like God exists, he is all good, all loving, and these types of things, and knowing that these actions exist, based on that we can infer, for example, like if this didn't happen, something way worse could have happened. There could have been an even worse result. There could have been like a complete destruction of the world or something like that. And even ignoring that, ultimately, we know that since God does exist, he is all loving and all good, that whatever happened here isn't a violation of him being all loving or all good. It's just an epistemic limitation or something we don't know the reason of.
No, but like he can still change that.
He could, as to the reason why that we don't know, but that doesn't mean he's evil. It's just purely based, it just appears evil based on our own epistemic limitations and us not having a moral explanation as to why this happened.
Can we agree that unaliving someone is evil?
Murder is evil.
Yeah, I don't think we can say the M word, that's why I'm saying unalive, but
okay, yeah.
the unaliving with M, can we agree that that's evil?
Yeah.
So if a group of people wants to do that 20 million times, wouldn't we agree that that's very evil?
Yeah.
So if he doesn't intervene like we know he can from the Holy Book, does he approve of that evil then?
Not necessarily. Whether he approves of it
but
or
he
not,
could have stopped it, right?
We know biblically that he doesn't approve of it, because he condemns it, like the murder or schmurder. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just trying to save your life, man.
Yeah, yeah. I forget. But as to the actual reason why he permitted these things, we don't know.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Do you understand why, from my point of view, that's evil? Because if we know that he can change our actions when we do something he doesn't want us to do, and then he refuses to do it when we're obviously breaking his rules, some of them even in his name, and he refused to intervene then, either he actually agrees with this evil, or he doesn't care enough to actually intervene like he did in the old book.
Yeah.
Can you see it from my point of view? I do understand that you don't think like I do, but can you see why, for me, this makes absolutely no sense?
Yeah, I can see why, but I mean, ultimately, it's just based on us not knowing why, which isn't like that, which it is like an argument from ignorance. It's not really like, logically speaking, it's not like a valid reasoning or argumentation.
Do not know why.
Yeah.
Sorry, you lost
That
me.
that it's not valid reasoning or argumentation because it's based on the fact that we don't know why, or like we don't have the explanation as to why.
But we do know that if
We do
something
know
bad
that
happened, we
God
can
is
change
all
our
loving and
actions.
all good. So based on this happening, we know at least that this isn't a violation of his all loving and all goodness and all powerfulness. Now, to the reason why this happened and how it doesn't violate it, like, we don't know. That's just an epistemic limitation.
Wait, did I understand you correctly there? That since he's all good and all loving, since this happened, it's not a violation of his
Yes,
word. or his-
I can deductively prove that God, it necessarily exists and is all good, all loving, all powerful, right? Fully actualized. So like, because of that, because we like, he does exist, and it's not possible for like him to violate his own nature, then this isn't a violation of his own nature. He's still all loving, all good, and all powerful. Now, as to the reason why this doesn't violate his nature, or how this is like acceptable or something, that's just an epistemic limitation ultimately.
Somehow in my brain that made it worse.
How so?
Because if this is allowed in the Christian God's nature, like,
Well, it doesn't matter if
my
it's a
gods
Christian
would never
God or
stand
not,
for this, you know.
because ultimately, like, deductively proving God, he has these attributes, whether it's the Christian God, the Muslim God, the Hindu God, doesn't matter. This being does exist. He is conscious, fully actualized, and this happened. So it doesn't matter if it's the Christian God, the Muslim God, or whatever, or if it's not a specific religion's God. This still happened, and this doesn't. It's impossible for this to violate his nature. So this because of that, this did happen. It's not a violation of his all good, all loving, all powerfulness. Now, but that's the reason why or how. It's just, or the reason how is just an epistemic limitation. It's not just because the Christian God or whatever.
But saying this is all good when we know what actually happened, that's the thing that makes it worse for me.
This doesn't violate his all goodness. I'm
But
not saying
it
that
kind
this
of
is all
does,
good.
though.
It doesn't. It's literally impossible for it to do it.
Did we not agree that Schmurder is evil?
Yeah, but like once again, it's literally impossible for it to violate his all goodness.
Yeah, but
Like if we necessarily
20
prove
million
God,
people are schmurdered and he allows it, that would make him.
that wouldn't make him.
Is it condoning? Sorry, I'm losing my English here.
That wouldn't make him not all good. As to the reason
But if
how
he
it can
agrees with
coexist
it.
is just an epistemic limitation. But if we deductively prove, like by necessity, God exists with these attributes, and this happens, for you to say like that means he's not all good, or if that even were the case, it would literally be impossible, and like all logic and rationale would just go down the drain for pretty much everything.
If I were to give you the power of God, would you stop smurdering?
I don't know if if I was fully actualized, and God, meaning I am perfect, and there is a perfect God that's fully actualized, and he's choosing this, that's the perfect course. So me being perfect, the same
I'm not
thing,
asking from.
then it would be
I'm
the same.
not asking you to take his morality. I'm asking you from your morality. If I gave you the power of God, you have the exact
It's the same
power as
answer.
the Christian God.
It's the same answer, because since I can deductively prove that there is a perfect God, and he's choosing this decision, that's the perfect decision. Then if I'm put in the same shoes, since that's the perfect decision, there's not multiple perfect decisions. It's going to be the same decision. And I'll
Are you telling me
I'll
there
actually
can't
know
be
why
two
too.
solutions to one problem?
There's only, I would say there's only one perfect solution for in this scenario.
So there can't be two perfect solutions to one problem.
There can in a different context. I'd argue that in this context there's only one. Because if there's another perfect solution, for example, where less people die or whatever, then that means the first solution. Let's say there's solution A and B. Solution A is what we went through now. Solution B, like let's say there was less people dead. That would be the perfect solution. That would be better, like objectively better than solution A. So because of that, I would say there's only one perfect solution. Or if there's multiple, it's the same output or same end result overall. On like in terms of morality.
If option B gives you less, wouldn't that be a better solution then?
So then that means option A isn't perfect. So once again, there's one perfect option. That's why I'm saying there's one perfect option.
No, I asked you if it was better, not if it's more perfect.
Well, the one that has, like, if everything's the same except one just has less less people are unalived, that would be better than option A. Because we know murder is bad.
Then we don't know the consequence of.
Well, I'm assuming right? Like same like everything's the same. The only different factor is that less people are unalived.
Yeah.
That would make it better.
Yeah, make it better, but not more perfect. Because perfect is still subjective. But
what?
Like I see it.
If everything else is the exact same and less people are unalived, that wouldn't make it better than the one where more people are unalived?
I didn't say better. I said more perfect.
There isn't more perfect. Perfect is perfect. There isn't further improvement from perfect.
Perfect is subjective. Still.
Perfect subjective in substance, like for example, what like you and I find attractive and what we see as perfect within someone's looks can be subjective, but with this we would argue is objective. Like it's objective, it's objectively human, like innocent people being unalived. Innocent people being unalived is objectively better than more innocent people being unalived.
So we agree on less people being unalived is better.
Objectively, yes.
Yeah, that means that if we are in option A right now, like you stated from the beginning,
that means if if God is all perfect and there's an option B with all the other variables the exact same but less people are unalived, that would be the perfect option.
Yeah, but if
knowing that and knowing that God's all perfect by necessity and he can't violate his nature, what the option we're living in right now is the perfect option. There isn't another perfect option that's like better.
But we just found an option where something is better.
No, whatever the best option, there's a perfect option. There isn't a more perfect option. So the perfect option in the scenario we came up with would be option B. It's not like there's just two perfect options, but one's more perfect.
Do you see why I didn't want to mention it's more perfect? I'm just saying that if option A is a perfect one and option B is a perfect one, but option B gives us less unalived
there isn't
people,
two perfect options.
If
there's a better option, then there can't be a more better than perfect. There's no improvement from perfect. The entire point or meaning of perfect is that it's the absolute best possible thing. Right? The meaning of perfect is that there's like the best possible thing. It can't be improved further. So if something's perfect, there can't be an even more perfect option. That'd be improving on something that's supposed to be perfectly improved. So either option A isn't perfect.
Subjective.
there in this context it would be objectively perfect. So if option B is the exact same but less people are unalive, that's the perfect option, and option A is the imperfect option.
Yeah, and what I'm
so going back to this, there's only one
God
perfect
has the
option.
power to go with option B.
No, because option B
Yes.
doesn't exist. Since God is all perfect, and by necessity, his actions that he makes and allows are perfect. So whatever scenario we're in is the perfect scenario. There's not a more perfect scenario. It's not possible.
But who claims that God is perfect?
I can deductively show by necessity that the first cause would have to be perfect, i.e. fully
No,
actualized.
you can't, because then I would also believe that God is perfect. You
What?
can't prove that God is perfect.
If I
because then
deductively
all-
prove that God is perfect, then you would believe that God is perfect. What's the problem with that? Like, how's that a rebuttal?
No, but like, okay. Again, God, you claim God is perfect. You say you can deductively prove that God is perfect. Is that
He
your
would
argument?
have to be. Yeah,
What do you mean he would have it to be
he would have to be, yeah.
from your claims?
If you deductively prove something, that's the necessary case. It would have to be that case. That's what it means to
Yeah,
deductively
but you
prove
can't
something.
prove that he's perfect.
I guarantee you I could deductively prove God is.
Okay, prove to me that the Christian God is perfect. But make it simple.
Just God is perfect. Just skipping like proving God. Are we assuming that in this scenario that
No, we have already established that there is a God.
So there is like a conscious God.
Or many, depending on your life view, but sure.
Well, I mean,
there is one there is one persified God. A creator. Call it whatever you want.
Okay. Okay, so I mean, with that being said, if it wasn't to be fully actualized, right? That means you are like you're perfect, right? You have the omni attributes. There isn't an improvement beyond fully actualized. Assuming, like, if there's this first cause, but it has potential, needs to be a reason for that potential qua PSR, right? Let's say X is the reason. If the reason it is the way that it must come from something else, right? That something, i.e. X, would then be purely actual, because only what is fully actual has no need for an external cause, and no like unrealized aspects that need explanation. There can't like in accordance to PSR, there can't be an infinite regress of reasons because it would violate PSR. So the ultimate reason has to be a reason that explains itself and has no other explanation. It's the source, i.e. being fully actualized. And then that would be the first cause. So the first cause ultimately is fully actualized by necessity. If it had potential, then it would need the reason X to explain that potential, and then that reason X would actually be the first cause that's fully actualized. Because the first cause is the terminus.
Can you say the same thing, but like I was 5 instead? Because I asked for simple.
Oh. So everything needs like an explanation. If the explanation, like the ultimate explanation, which is what the first cause is to be the ultimate explanation means you explain yourself. You don't have an explanation, right? Outside of yourself. To explain yourself, you would need to be fully actualized, meaning like having the omni attributes, being perfect, right? Otherwise, there would need to be an explanation as to why you aren't perfect, which then gets an infinite regress, which there can't be an infinite regress of explanations. Otherwise, that violates principle of sufficient reasoning. So that's why there would have to be a fully actualized first cause in like the simplest terms.
No, you can make it simpler. But are you applying Leibniz formulation to this?
A lightness? What?
Leibniz, yeah.
What does that mean?
You're referring to PSR.
Yeah.
Do you know who Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz is?
No.
He's one of the key figures for PSR.
Oh, that's cool.
Because you're making assumptions here. Like, when you mention PSR, from PSR, if I would ask myself, why does this pen fall to the ground when I drop it? The PSR would say there is a reason, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there can be multiple reasons. Why does this pen fall to the ground when I drop it? One could be gravity.
Yeah.
That's one reason, right? But it can also be the fact that I dropped the pen. One of the reasons why the pen fall to the ground was because I picked up the pen.
There can be
I
multiple
held it up
reasons
and I
with
dropped
PSR.
it. Yeah, you can, because PSR says there is a reason, but it doesn't define what the reason could be.
There could be multiple PSR, like there could be multiple sufficient reasoning. For example, gravity plus your hand letting go.
Yeah, but it could also be depending on how I want to answer that question. Right?
It doesn't. Let's say that again. Sorry.
So what you did now is what you inflicted. No, not inflicted. Sorry, English. You put in two explanations into one answer, but I can also choose to use only one answer.
Yeah.
I dropped the pen.
PSR doesn't require like one simple cause. It only states that nothing exists.
PSR can be one simple cause, right?
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah. Okay, so we're using Leibniz formula here. Good. You still haven't proven to me that God is all good.
How so?
You made assumptions. You have put in PSR where you have given that this is the reason, but there could be multiple reasons, right?
Like, for the reason like with potentiality, ultimately there would have to be one reason that is self-explanatory, because there can't be an infinite regress.
But we state that the PSR can have multiple reasons, right?
Yeah, there can be for certain things, yeah.
Yeah. So when you did your research, because this was a good answer, you could dumb it down a little bit more to show me, speak to me like a 5-year-old. It would actually increase my understanding, since I'm not a native English speaker, from what you're trying to get here. But you still haven't proven to me with full faith that God is all good with your arguments.
So what part like is not sufficient for you? Like if
the fact that I'm still sitting here thinking that God is all not good.
If something having potentiality would need a reason, and there can't be an infinite regress of reasons, so ultimately there has to be one reason that's self-explanatory, and to be self-explanatory you would have to be fully actualized, because if you have potentiality then you need another reason, right? There would have to be a self-explanatory.
So I'm 5.
I don't know how to dumb it down further, dude.
But then you don't understand what you're saying fully.
Well, there's only so much I can dumb it down to.
No, you can dumb it down even more.
I don't know how I would dumb it down even further. Like, I don't know how far I would have to dumb it down either for you to understand.
Here's the thing. I'm giving you a clean slate. Like, you can dumb it down how much you want to dumb it down. But you need to prove to me that God is all good. Yeah. Rambling PSR is not proof.
Well, here's the problem.
That God is all good.
It's not that you're not saying that my proof is insufficient. It's that you don't understand it. So ultimately, it's just a personal.
Oh, I never said I didn't understand it. I'm saying that you haven't.
So I don't have to keep dumbing it down?
Yeah.
Okay. So then, what part did you not understand? What part was with what I said, my explanation.
I didn't understand a thing of what you said. Humor me.
You just said you understood what I said.
Yeah, but humor me. Do you know what that means?
If you already understood what I
Assume
said,
that I didn't understand.
I'm
a
not going to
se-
keep
a
repeating
single
it to you. Then.
sentence of what you said.
You already said you understood what I said. I'm not going to just humor
Yeah,
you
why
and
otherwise would I,
re-explain it a couple
argue
more
liveness
times
with you?
as if you didn't understand when you understand. That's just a waste of our time.
Yeah, give me solid proof that God is all good without using PSR.
Why can't I use PSR?
Why would you need to use PSR if your God is all good?
That he would, to prove that he would have to be all good, because PSR, at least within my explanation, would yeah, because it would be the easiest way, I guess. It's the way I go about it. It's completely valid. Ultimately, saying that I can't use PSR because it's not like the only way or something, that's what we call a restrictive argument, which is just fallacious. Like, you just saying I can't use it because I could do it a different way, that's just fallacious.
Okay, if you say so.
Okay.
But you've stated that you can prove to me that God is all good.
Yeah.
I am sitting here, and you have done your full explanation.
Well,
I let you talk about the explanation, and you
I gave my explanation as to why you'd have to be, and I'm curious what part was not sufficient enough. What part did not make sense? Like,
just because something has to be doesn't mean it's the actual truth, right?
just because something has to be this way doesn't mean it's the truth. What do you mean by that?
Yep. How long did
there's scenarios where something would have to be a certain way, and like a certain scenario that's just like it's just a scenario, but how's that apply to what we're talking about here?
No, but yeah, it does apply to what we're talking about, because when you say it has to be, it shows that it's still a possibility that it's not.
What? If it has to be a certain way, that means it's not a possibility. It can be a different way.
Okay, so
it's necessary.
The world flat?
It's necessary that would have to be this way.
Okay, is the world flat?
How is this relevant, dude? No,
it's really relevant. I'm gonna get to the point. Yes or no? Is the world flat?
No, it's not.
At the 1400s, it had to be flat.
No.
1600, it had to be flat.
No. It didn't.
What
do you mean it didn't have? It had to be flat.
Because it had to be flat, because otherwise it went against some religions. And I'm not saying Christian here. I need to be really clear that I'm not meaning Christians here, but they made the same point that something had to be, because it went against. Sorry, English again. Went against their worldview.
Okay.
And even if we use PSR on this, with the absolute dumbest meaning of PSR, they still would have agreed that it had to be flat. For our belief to exist, the world had to be. It was necessity. It was a necessity. Sorry, that it had to be flat.
Mm-hmm.
Then everyone suddenly woke up and realized that. Most of us woke up and realized that it didn't have to be flat. But just because something has to be.
Well, this wouldn't apply here, right? Like, this is based upon absolute metaphysical necessity. Like, it follows from self-evident principles that cannot change, cannot be coherently denied. It's not like a depend on our observations or something. It's what necessarily must be true in all possible worlds where change and motion exists. The idea like that it must be fully actualized is deduced from metaphysical principles. Like, it's necessary. It's not based on like our just knowledge at the time or from what we know, like empirically what we know. Then in this world model, then the earth would have to be flat, like you're giving an example of. This is based on like self-evident principles that absolutely cannot be denied and are necessary. They must be true.
Okay, so in no way in your mind there is a possibility that you're wrong.
No.
Okay, then I think
The
our
only way
discussion
I
is
could
done
be
here,
wrong
because-
is if you could like
Yeah.
show that what I'm saying is inaccurate. It's not something where it's like, oh, we don't know, or it's limited by our knowledge at this time or something. It's if you could show that like this isn't logically coherent, or this isn't necessary.
Yeah, but to bring, even though I follow your point, to bring up the argument that this proves that God is all good when I spent 10 minutes of you arguing why he's not all good earlier.
Your
we're still gonna
argument
be at
on
the
why he
standpoint.
was not all good is because we don't have a reason as to why there's evil and this stuff happening if God's
Because
all
we
good
can't
and all loving.
comprehend
That's
God,
an
right?
that's an argument from ignorance. Your
No, 'cause
reasoning
we
is
can't
just
comprehend
fallacious.
God, right?
Yeah, we can't fully comprehend God. Yeah, like
So
in
how
the sense
can
of
we
like
comprehend that
his
he's all
mind.
good?
That you can comprehend aspects that are necessary. Now you can't comprehend what it's actually like, for example, to be omnipresent and be everywhere at the same time. You can't comprehend exactly how he created everything, and like within the examples that we're talking about, we right now we can't comprehend how he's able to be all good and all loving with there being evil in the world. But there's still things that we can comprehend. For example, like deductively showing that it's necessary that God exists.
No. I agree with you that God exists because I'm a believer as well. It's just that I don't believe you believe in the same God, and that's okay. You have worldview and I have mine, and that's okay. But when you're trying to convince me and prove to me that your God is all good, but you still can't convince me, which should be easy, since I'm also a believer.
Whether you're not convinced or not, let's just say, assuming that I'm completely correct, I completely gave an actual reason it's completely correct. Whether you're convinced or not is purely based on subjectivity, right? You can have facts be put in front of you and you still deny it, and that's completely on you. I mean, for example, do you believe the Earth is flat or do you believe the Earth's round?
I believe the Earth is round.
Okay.
No, I don't actually believe it.
You know it? Or
no, I have been very convinced by it.
Okay. I mean, let's say,
even though that goes against my faith, but that's okay.
Let's say the Earth, flat earthers are given proof that the Earth is round and has to be round, and then they still deny it out of their own ignorance. Just because you deny something doesn't mean that that person didn't prove it or didn't prove it properly. That's completely subjective. The way you would go about showing that is if you could justify how it's not proof or how it's not done properly, versus just claiming it. Otherwise, it's really just anecdotal fallacies and personal incredulity fallacy.
Are there flat earthers that has proven in their mind to other people that the Earth is flat?
Okay.
No, that's a question. Are there people that has proven to themselves and to others in their from their view that the Earth is flat?
They've made themselves convinced. I wouldn't say proven.
But
proof,
they have made themselves
proof is
convinced that they
absolute.
are-
It's 100%. If something's false, you can't prove to yourself that thing's false, because that's not what the word proof means.
No, but if they can make the argument, a really strong argument, that the Earth is flat, and they feel
That doesn't mean
that they have proved that for others, does that make the word flat?
No.
Good. Then you're starting to see my point.
So you're saying mine isn't proof?
I'm saying your assertion.
It's a strong argument, but it's not
makes
proof.
you close to the possibility that you can be wrong. I accepted many moons ago that I might be wrong of who's the real God. I accepted many moons ago that my religion might be the false one. you haven't, right?
Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah. So what I'm saying with that is I'm going to respect that you think that you have proven God is good. I am still unconvinced, and that should be okay from both our perspectives, right?
I mean, yeah, whether you're convinced or not, it's up to you.
Yeah, but can we agree that it's okay for me to still believe in my gods, and it's okay for you to still believe in your God?
Like, objectively, or in my opinion?
Both.
I'd say no for both.
So, in your opinion, it's not okay for me to have my gods?
Yeah. Like, for you,
Why?
like, it's not okay to believe in a false God.
Why?
Because it's false and it leads you down a path of, like, eternal separation from God.
And who will lose on that, me or you?
You.
So why isn't it okay for me to go that path?
Because you lose on something. You spend eternal separation from God.
Is it up to you to decide what I deem fair to lose or not?
You asked for my opinion, not your opinion. So I don't know why you're bringing up your opinion.
Questions here. Because you also said objectively no. So
Yeah, objectively, I would say if a falsehood leads you into out of truth and into, for example, a position like hell, wouldn't you agree that being in heaven is objectively better than hell?
Depends on what actually happens down there. Because, the texts are a little bit wonky.
All right, dude. All right, this is where I'm just going to end the conversation. I appreciate y'all for all tuning in. I'm going to end the TikTok live specifically here. God bless y'all on TikTok. All right, YouTube. What the hell, bro? What was that? Like, I know it's over when you're saying that that hell is not objectively worse than heaven. All right. This is a video I got cooked up for you. Argument for motion debate. But real quick, just give me a second. I'm turning off my screen just so I can take out my phone. All right, bet. He might be a flat earther. We don't know. I hope not. Yeah, I hope that was beneficial for y'all. I hope it was beneficial for him. I can't do much there. Ultimately, I can't really convince anyone. It's the Holy Spirit that does it, but that's the Holy Spirit's job at that point. It's not my job. All right, let's get locked in on the video. I know this guy, Noi Badi. He did recorded. I don't know if you guys know Moses the servant. He's like a oneness debater who's just insane at debating oneness. I'll give him props on that. He's really good at debating oneness. But he did a debate thing with him.
The prime mover argument doesn't demonstrate God because God is a mind that created the universe, or being with a mind that created the universe.
No,
Whatever you think.
The prime mover demonstrates God because the prime mover articulates a necessary being.
Yeah, you can
necessary being.
Hold up, just making sure the audio's all good. Let me know if the audio's all good.
God.
Yeah, when you say being, right? You're saying somebody with personhood, or are you saying?
That's not. Let's have to say entity, an entity.
Okay, so
being's not in like the context of like prime mover and that type of thing. Being is like is a state of existence. It's not just like a personhood. It's not being in the sense like a human being, like an actual like a human person. At its simplest core, it's just a state of existence.
Entity doesn't necessarily.
Now, you would technically argue that since the first mover is conscious, and like is existence and fully actual, then like a conscious thing is a being in the sense that we understand it, right? Like an actual person.
Say a mind, correct?
So I was gonna get to that part, but I'm talking about regardless. Right. If it's a contingent being, categorically already. Are you listening to me? Are you
Yeah,
hearing
but
me
I
or
asked
no?
a yes or no question. You're just dodging that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not dodging the question. I'm saying that question wasn't even relevant to my point of bringing it up.
Well, I'm
So
asking,
you're
I'm asking for clarification.
so
I'm asking.
yeah, but then you're doing the very thing you're accusing me of. You're
How?
disregarding it because you're disregarding the thing that I put up as a polemic towards you.
I'm
You
asking-
said that it
I'm
doesn't.
asking
You
for my
said that
question.
the primary mover does not necessitate God. But I said to oppose that is it does because what it does is articulate a contingent being, and a contingent being categorically is what we would call God. You just said, well, come
Look, I
on,
understand what you're
instead
saying.
of engaging what I just said.
Look, I understand you're.
To oppose that is it does because what it does is articulate a contingent being, and a contingent being categorically is what we would call God. You just said, well,
No. What is he saying? A contingent being is not what we call God. No. A contingent being is something that's dependent on another thing for its existence and something that can change. I.e., for example, humans are contingent. I.e., rocks, earth, etc. They're contingent on something else for its existence and they can change. God is not dependent on something else for his existence, and he can't change. He's not a contingent being, he's a necessary being.
come
Look, I
on,
understand what you're saying.
instead of
Look,
engaging what I just said.
look, I understand you're saying necessary being means God. I understand. Look, if that's what you're defining God as, then that's compatible with atheism. Why? Because atheism. I'm about to tell you. Because atheism.
Go ahead.
Because I'm about to tell you. Because atheism, in the standard traditional sense, means somebody who believes that there is no being with a mind that created the universe or mind that created the universe. If you're just saying entity without the attachment of mind, that's going to be compatible with atheism then. Because
Yeah, that is correct. In fact, this is why I think like the variant I run specifically, I think is just better in the normal argument for motion. Obviously, like if you take the premises of the standard argument for motion, let's go argument for motion premises. Look at this. Something is in motion. Whatever is moved by something else. This process of causing motion cannot regress infinitely. Therefore, a first mover exists. The first mover is God. This here, like these premises, these don't prove a conscious mind, right? This just proves a first cause. For atheists, this would be Big Bang, right? This is compatible with atheism. The thing with my argument is, 1 second, let me turn off my screen because I gotta log in. Let me just pull it up. Just give me a second. All right, boom. The thing with my argument is within the premises himself, an atheist can't affirm this because I also include that it's a conscious mind that's the first cause, that's purely actual, right? These premises, you can't affirm this as an atheist. This doesn't fit with atheism, because what God is a all powerful, right, fully actualized conscious being that's like the source of existence, or the first cause of existence, and this is what this argues for. So he is correct in saying like the standard argument for motion syllogism is compatible. It is compatible with atheism.
atheists they have no commitment to not believing that there's a cause of the universe that's an entity without a mind, right? Atheists, all they're committed to believing is that something would.
Yeah, that is true. Unknown. Normally people will do combine it with other things. I mean, you have to. Otherwise, it's not going to work for proving God. If you just run the argument for motion with its normal premises and don't bring in anything else, it doesn't prove God, like a conscious, all-powerful being.
Mind created the universe. That's it. Or not something where a mind did not create the universe. Or there is no, and there's no such thing as somebody with a mind that created the universe. That's all atheism is committed to believe. So when you say prime mover, and prime mover could just be an entity that doesn't necessitate mind, that's compatible with atheism. You understand?
Okay. So this is what I was looking for. I was just stalling you, Loki.
But do you understand so far what I said?
Yeah, you understand what you said. It's irrelevant.
Agree with it?
I was just stalling you off.
Do you agree with it?
The reason why, no, I don't. Here's why.
Okay, tell me.
So here's why. So atheism, your line of view for atheism would still not satisfy the principle of sufficient reasoning, nor the principle of proportionate causality.
Real quick, ALC, like when you're talking about the modal ontological argument, are you referring to like the argument in which it's saying like the possibility that a necessary God exists means he must exist?
So the prime mover, the argument for motion, articulates not only a
Yeah, honestly, I like all arguments for God, even old ladies saying, "Look at the trees." I'm out. Yeah, I like them all. I think, but for specifically proving God to someone who doesn't believe, the most efficient, effective one would be the argument for motion, just because it's the simplest. It deductively proves God necessarily. It's logically valid. It doesn't have like none of the gods, the gaps, or anything like that, and it's simpler, right? It doesn't have any rebuttals, right? With tag, for example, tag is so complex, no one's like the average Joe or an atheist is not going to understand that. You can see that by watching like any Jay Dyer open debate. He runs tag, they have no idea what he's saying, right? So I don't think that's going to be as effective as the argument for motion.
a contingent being, but it suffices the principle of sufficient reasoning and the principle of proportionate causality, which will obligate that entity, that is that contingent being, to be an agent with a mind.
Okay, so give the argument. So give the argument why the prime mover or the uncaused causer necessitates it has a mind. Give the argument for that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So
I'm not in the town. So hold on 1 second. Let me get my notes out. Go ahead.
Yeah, give me a second. I got you.
Do you want to do formally or informally?
What you mean? It'll probably be informal.
Premises and then conclusion, or just like
yeah, it'll probably just be informal.
Okay. Do you?
Okay. So the principle of proportionate causality, right?
Oh, also, ALC with the modal ontological argument, I like that. I don't know it that well, like because it's just not something I run or study. The thing with that is like if you're running that, atheist you got to be prepared for the atheist ego you, or saying that doesn't make sense or logically follows. The only way it will work is if someone knows the modal system, like S5, right? If they don't know that, it's going to sound like absolute BS. You know what I mean? Like if they don't understand that modal system says that the possibility of a necessary existence entails an actual existence, it's just going to sound like absolute jabber. But like if you are talking to someone like that, then that's a very good argument.
States.
And it's very simple if they know S5.
that a cause must contain in some matter, whether formally, virtually, or immanently, whatever perfections or properties are found in its effect.
Say that one more time.
Right? The principle of proportionate causality asserts that a cause must contain in some manner, whether formally, virtually, or immanently, whatever perfections or properties are found in its effect. Okay? So
is that saying that whatever is produced or the cause for that production must also contain what is produced? Is that something like that?
It must contain in some manner, either formally, virtually, or immanently, whatever perfections or properties are found in its effect.
Oh yeah, that's not a problem. Yeah. So why?
If the contingent being is the cause, and all things derive its causal power and existence from this contingent being, and we are one of those things that derive its causal power. Well, based on this principle of proportionate causality, you have a mind, and your mind is derived from. Hey, bro, what's
this? Is actually, wow. Actually, this is a pretty smart one. Just thinking about this, like you could theoretically, as it makes sense in my head, I don't know how it would play out an argument. You could theoretically use this to show that, for example, it can't be a non-conscious first cause. I get into that a little bit with, for example, the problem with evil and the ontological principle, but you could use this to show that it can't be a non-conscious being because, for example, like humans existing with a mind, right? If it doesn't possess something like that, it doesn't give. But at the same time, in my head, I don't know also if this would work since like non-conscious beings exist, for example, like if you're saying that it can't give what it doesn't possess, like with this principle, I obviously I haven't looked into this. I will after this. Then theoretically, if what I'm understanding at base value is true, then that would mean that a non-conscious being, since the conscious God doesn't possess non-consciousness, it couldn't create, for example, a non-conscious being like a rock.
What's up with you, man? Are you okay?
No, I understand what you're saying. No,
Why? But why interrupt me? Did I interrupt you?
Yeah, you have, but it's fine. Go ahead.
Did I interrupt you?
You want to?
I didn't interrupt you. He
You
might
want
have.
to bet 1,000 you did? You want to bet 1,000 you didn't?
I interrupted you, or he interrupted you?
You want to bet 1,000 you didn't? Right?
I didn't interrupt.
You want to bet 1,000 you didn't?
But I didn't interrupt. If I did interrupt you, bro, let's start clean right now.
Okay.
Nobody interrupts anybody. Okay.
Okay, then let's go.
And calm down too, buddy. Like, what's up with you?
I mean, you're
like,
trying to press me.
Nobody's pressing you. I'm telling you, stop interrupting me on my live.
That's fine. And then you were trying to say that I did.
All right, cool. So let's cut it. Chill out, and we can have this conversation. Or you can just dip, because now you're making me lose my patience.
All right, let's go.
Cool. So anyway, based off of the principle of proportional causality.
Oh, I agree. Tactical. I don't really like that either. That they just think of you as like a lesser person or idiot. I mean, ultimately that's just like an ego thing too. You see it with apologists too. Like, I don't like to dig into other people, but it is true. Like Jay Dyer does that, for example. Like, don't want to hate on him, but anyone who like, there's like a million clips and like, oh, you don't know epistemology? You can't be talking to me. Like, as if like not knowing something, or just because you know something and someone doesn't, therefore you're just immediately better, or like you're lesser of a person.
Whatever that call.
But also, I guess there is some truth into that too, because like, for example, if you're a lesser of a debater if you don't know how to debate, you know what I mean?
It asserts that a cause must contain in some manner, whether it be formally or virtually or imminently, whatever perfections or properties that are found in its effect. So, if we are an effect from the first causer, right? Therefore, are caused, we contain properties, whether it be formally, virtually, or imminently, of said cause. Well, mind is not derived in and of ourselves, because based off of the principle of sufficient reasoning, right, a different principle, we can't derive something that we don't have, something that's in potential of us from ourselves. Something that is already in actuality has to be has to be the derivative, or sorry, has to be derived from in order to actualize what we're talking about. Okay. And here, there's a friend of mine that can actually articulate something better than I can. Hold on. Yeah, hold on. Okay. Hey, Elijah, come up.
Sorry, I
wasn't done.
I heard it from Elijah first. I've debated Elijah on this before.
Cool. We can talk about it together again. So again.
Oh my God.
So if we have minds, we have these things that you're saying that is not necessary for a God, then by what manner do we derive them from? It would have to be that same prime causa to do so.
So it's not the case that just because we have something, then the composition of that thing that we have, right, must also must also be up to substantiated or contained with the thing that caused it. For example, a building made of bricks, when it's composited, right? The building is not something that the bricks have. The bricks compose the building. So the bricks themselves aren't buildings.
No, the building is composed. The building is composed.
I just said that.
No, you said the bricks are composed of building.
No, I didn't. I said the bricks compose buildings.
This might be just a 40-inch slip. That's fine.
Okay, that's fine. The point is, the bricks themselves are not buildings. Right?
Yeah, so
it's not the case that just because something is a building, that the thing made from the building must also contain building. So similarly,
that wasn't the argument though.
So similarly, it is logically possible that the cause of the universe can just contain all of the fundamental building blocks of the universe, right?
Yeah, no. So
what? So he's literally, if you think about what he's saying, then you're saying that the first cause contains consciousness, but it isn't conscious. That's just like violates the laws of logic there. It possesses consciousness, but it's non-conscious. I mean, he's already cooked himself.
Wait, I'm
sorry, not in the middle of my sentence. I'm sorry.
It's let him finish.
I'm sorry.
Wrap it up though.
So I'm sorry. And so when it comes to us having a mind, it is explained from the fact that a mind is a type of thing that can come from the fundamental building blocks of the universe being formatted in a certain way. And so if the cause of the universe, right, where it's a not God situation, and it's logically possible that the cause of the universe, if there was a cause, right, I'm granting that argument, but if there was a cause, it's logically possible that the cause doesn't have a mind and still have the necessary requirements to build mind.
No, so yeah, so
yeah, why would that
the
be?
principle? Yeah, with the principle of proportionate causality, right? You're saying that effect, or the thing that has an effect, it's in its cause either formally, virtually, or imminently. So
Formally, virtually, or eminently. What are those things?
What I said.
yeah, so formally, if the effect for the cause to be contained formally, it would mean that like you have that thing exactly. So like for example,
okay,
if I cause you, if you need $1 and I cause you to have $1, right, and I have it in cash, I formally have that thing, right? I have it in the exact same form that I'm giving it to you. So I have it cash and I'm causing you to have $1 cash. Now virtually means that I have a way in which to bring that thing about.
Perfect.
So say for instance, hold on.
That already applies.
Hold on, buddy. Relax.
No, it doesn't. In fact, it buries him further. A non-conscious being does not have like a way to create something conscious. Like for example, with this, it's either with the principle, it's either saying that you have to possess that thing, you could give it out, or you have to you could possess, for example, I think I figured it out now. A conscious being can create something non-conscious because it has a eminent or higher ability. So let's say, take this here, free draw. Let's go here. What is all this garbage? How do I remove this? New. Okay, so let's say there's the value, I'll redo it. 2, 1, and 0. Let's say this is consciousness. This is non-consciousness. I don't know what 0 would be. So essentially, you can, if the conscious being could create something that's conscious because it possesses it, right? Like the ontological principle. And it could create something non-conscious because it's above non-conscious, right? Like 2 can create 1 by just essentially splitting up mathematically. It's higher, right? It has the ability. A non-conscious being can't create a conscious being because it doesn't possess that ability or a level. In video games, this thing's locked, you have to be level 35 and you're level 22, right? I can't possess the level 35 thing because I don't possess that level or above. Same thing here. The non-conscious thing can't create a conscious thing because it does not possess something equivalent to a conscious thing, like consciousness or above consciousness, which isn't an above, right? It's the same thing here. So what he's arguing, no, this couldn't be the case because a non-conscious being is below consciousness. It cannot give what it does not have. The same way with, for example, the ontological principle, since God is all good, he cannot create something evil because he does not possess any evil. If you get what I'm saying.
Relax, calm down.
So virtually would be.
By the way, that's going to go on the sheet. At some point today on the argument for motion doc, I will have that updated for specifically proving that God would have to, or the first cause would have to be conscious using the.
I have a way in which I could bring that about. Say for instance, I don't have $1 cash, but I have it Zelle, right? I have a way in which I can give you $1, right?
Yes.
And then imminently would be I have the ability to write my own banknotes. So I can cause you to have $1 imminently in a much higher sense. So, or if I just got in here, but if he ran the argument for motion, right? And if you're gonna grant, my fault. Yeah, so if you're gonna grant the argument for motion that ends with this existence that is pure act, it would not exist either formally or virtually. It would exist imminently, which means abstractly and universally, which means that it has a mind.
Abstractly and universally? What does that mean?
Yeah, so
okay, you cannot be debating going into the lesser thing. If you don't know like these basic terms like abstract or universal or like metaphysical and stuff, you cannot be debunking the argument for motion or actually expect to have a chance in an argument for motion debate, right? Like it's a metaphysical debate. If you don't know what even metaphysics mean or what metaphysical means, let alone anything about the concept, you have no chance in that debate.
That means the things that are contained within the cause, they don't exist formally. So, if
Are
we're
you
talking
familiar?
about,
Are you familiar with Platonism?
yeah,
Do you think the Platonic realm is a mind?
no, but that doesn't matter.
Right,
That
so-
doesn't matter for the
so
debate.
it does-
Once again, Platonism's doesn't relate to the argument for motion. Argument for motion is based on like Aristotelian metaphysics, not Platonism.
It doesn't matter because you just said if something is abstracta, then it entails mind. That's what you just said.
No, so
You
when you're
said
talking
something is
about,
abstract, and
Well, yeah. So ALC, God is perfect, therefore He can't create anything imperfect. You could go into the same principle here, right? If you possess something higher, higher than that, you could do something. Like I cannot speak. Wow. For example, if God possesses a perfection, and this is imperfection, right? He can create something imperfect because he has like that above thing. Same thing with like the levels, right? You have level 35. If he's level 36, I can possess level 35. I can get the level 35 item. I can hold it. I can use it. Same thing here. Like he's possessing level 1. He's above imperfection. He can create something imperfect. Now, he couldn't create something evil because that would go against his nature, right? This wouldn't imply for his all good, like in the sense of like he can't create something inherently evil. He created something that's inherently perfect that can be misused to be imperfect in some sense. I guess you'd say that. In a sense, like for example, in the Bible says, and he saw it was perfect, right, in creation. I believe it uses the word perfect. That you can create something perfect initially, for example, or all good, for example, free will was originally is all good, and then this can be misused to do evil, but it's initially a good thing, right? It's not inherently evil. It can be used to do evil. Same thing, like humans weren't inherently evil. They just misused their gift and they weren't inherently imperfect. They were just misused their gift, right? If that makes sense. I'm going off like what I'm understanding from this. I'll actually write that down and look into it just to make sure I can give you all the best possible explanation. And that I'll send that in the Discord. I don't know if I'll add that to the sheet.
universal it entails mind. That's literally what you said.
because if you're saying that something exists in an abstract way, in a universal way, in which way does that thing exist? That's a thing that exists within an intellect. Like for example.
But you just said you understand Platonism, and you just said that under Platonism,
but you don't have to.
mind,
You don't have
the Platonic
to.
realm.
You don't have to affirm.
So
You don't have to. You do not have to affirm a strict Platonic realm. I'm gonna have to
I'm
go.
not saying you. I didn't say you have to. Look, you're not. Look what I'm trying to. Look what I'm saying. What you're saying. I'm saying that what you just said was that there seems to be like a logical impossibility that if something is abstract and universal, that in order for that to, if we have abstracta and universalism, that it necessitates that it has.
That's not what I'm saying.
Right. That's what you're saying. Wait,
No,
you're not
no.
saying that.
No.
Wait. Okay. Just to be clear, you're not saying that if something is universal and abstract, that it doesn't entail man.
No, you're saying that because we have abstracts and universals, that means that there's a mind. That's not what I'm saying.
No. Just to be clear, right? Maybe it's like a miswording what on my end, but I'm trying to be clear right now. What I'm saying, you're saying is, it seems to be the case that you're telling me that if something is abstract and universal, that entails mind. That's what it seems like. Are you saying that? Yes or no?
Can you say it one more time? Because I'm outside.
If something is abstract and universal, it entails mind. Is that what you're saying? Yes or no?
If an abstract or universal is formally contained in it, or is contained in anything, that entails a mind.
I couldn't hear you. There was a big noise that was over.
Oh, my fault. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm saying that if something is contained, if an abstract or universal is contained, right, then it would entail a mind, not just the.
What does it mean for it to be contained? What does that mean?
Here, look, I have to go. So here, if you want.
Yeah. ALC, I see what you're saying. That God could create something evil because it's below him. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I off the top of my head, like from what I know, going back to the ontological principle, that would violate the ontological principle. But today, I'll within the Discord and within the sheet, I'll have like that stuff written down for you. I have this written down somewhere in my notes. I just don't have my notes with me. They're somewhere on like the other side of the house. But I'll add that in there, and also refine it a little bit.
To hear the argument for God having a mind, I can just run it for you right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Wait, is it gonna be different than what Noe Body just said?
It's just gonna be a little bit formalized. So you could just say whichever premise you disagree with, and then I can go.
Like off the top of my head, creating evil would violate his nature because he is all good. Versus, for example, with consciousness, creating something non-conscious isn't a violation of his nature, in the sense of how creating something evil would be a violation of all goodness, like directly. If you're all good, you can't do evil, right? So you can't create evil. That's like the ontological principle, right? Versus being conscious, that doesn't mean it wouldn't contradict your nature to create something non-conscious, because non-conscious isn't like doesn't go against your nature necessarily, in the same sense that being all good and creating something evil would.
Okay. I feel like you gave this already. Let's hear it.
Whatever is in effect must be in the cause. Hold on, just listen to the premises, okay?
Yeah, just to be clear, what's P1? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so whatever is in an effect must be in the cause, either formally, virtually, or imminently. That's just the principle of proportionate causality that we went over, okay?
Formally, virtually,
or imminently. Yes.
Gotcha. P2.
Okay, P2. The purely actual actualizer is the cause of all things. Which you're granting. That's P2. P3. Therefore, the forms or patterns of all things must exist in some way.
The forms or patterns
of all things
must
exist in some way.
Is this going to be like an equivocation of the term exist?
No, it just exists in the cause in some way. Exists in it, my fault.
Okay.
Okay.
Move on from that. Let's P4.
Okay, but they do not exist as they do in material particulars.
Say that again?
But they do not exist as they do in material particulars.
But they, as in forms and patterns?
Forms and patterns do not exist in this unactualized actualizer the same way that they do in material particulars.
But forms or patterns do not exist
in the same way
in the same way
do in material particulars.
In material particulars as they do in the actual actualizer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they exist in an abstract manner, as in the intellect.
They exist. Well, hold on. So does abstract manner necessarily entail intellect?
Yeah, if you're going to be dealing with like the forms.
So maybe it's just the definition of abstracta, right? So is by definition an abstract thing, by definition something in the mind?
You said, wait, hold on, my fault. You said what?
Is by definition.
Just to start, the way Elijah right here is going about it is just so much more complex than it needs to be. Like, you could argue it so much simpler. Just bring up that principle that he was talking about and go down that route, or you can go down the route I go. But going down this route is just so much more complex than it needs to be. Like, this guy is having to write down all these words and stuff too.
Something abstract, something in the mind. Is that how you're defining abstracta? That is entails mind.
Abstract means something that's causally inert.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not saying abstracta and definitionally entails mind, right?
Oh, he's stating the Hollywood 13. My fault, bro. My fault.
Where y'all at, bro?
Yeah,
No, anybody's crazy. No, anybody's crazy.
Okay.
No, anybody's wild, bro.
No, bro. I just got pulled up on. You gonna be here for a second. All right.
Yeah. So, are you saying by abstracta, does abstracta entail mind? Yes or no?
Does abstracta entail mind?
Yeah.
So for this, we would say that if the things that the unactualized and actualizer, the things that these forms and patterns exist in, we're just saying that they exist in an immaterial way that doesn't entail potential. So if they exist in an immaterial
What was the
way,
question I asked?
yeah. So if they exist, I'm not saying that it necessarily entails mind, but if they exist in an immaterial way in which these things can be contained, it would be contained in an immanent way, like an intellect. So like how you could contain the idea of triangularity.
So like an intellect means that not necessarily intellect, but
No, it means intellect.
Yeah, I look. Is what you're saying something like an intellect is an example of this being substantiated, but an intellect isn't the only way? Is that something you're saying?
No, that would be the way in which it would be contained.
Okay, so are you saying that an intellect is the only way? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, and are you saying that because what it means to be abstract is for it to entail mind?
I'm saying that. Okay, I'm saying that the way in which
that's going to be the contention. P5 is just going to be the contention then, because I don't think.
What's the argument against it?
I don't see any reason why abstracta would necessitate mind, even if it's contained. Because as you said earlier, Platonic realms.
All you're saying is that they're formally contained in the unactualized actualizer in an abstract way. And the abstract way that we're saying is the intellect.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm saying that even if there's an actualized actualizer and there were things that are abstract contained in it, it doesn't mean that it would be a mind. Why? Because it's possible that things can contain abstracta without it being a mind. For example, Platonic realms.
No, so.
What are you saying no to?
No, because, so the reason
what you're saying no to.
Yes, the reason as to why that wouldn't work.
What is the statement you're saying no to?
The last thing that you said in regards to it can be in something like a Platonic realm. Platonic realms do not have causal power.
You're mistaken.
Okay.
You're mistaken. I'm saying that's not what I'm saying.
Wait. In the Platonic realm, do the abstractors have causal power?
Do abstracta have causal power? My definition of abstracta is that things that don't have causal power.
Okay, this being causes everything. That's what I'm saying.
There isn't any. Hold on, you're mistaken. There's a difference between containing abstracta and the abstracta themselves being causal.
Okay, but you're positive.
So for example, I have causal power, but my abstracta that I contain doesn't have causal power. You understand the difference?
Oh, exactly. So the reason, exactly. So the.
Wait, you understand the difference?
You cooked yourself. You just cooked yourself.
I didn't cook myself.
That's his point. Finish what you said, Elijah. That's his point. That you contain things that don't have causal power, but you in of yourself have causal power.
Because you have intellect. You can bring those things into fruition because you contain those things in your intellect. You contain them in a more imminent way, and you have the ability, and you actually have causal power.
Look, I'm not denying that the unactualized actualizer has causal power. I'm just saying
it's contained in the intellect.
If that's the case, if that's the case, hold on, wait.
I get it. Hold on, bro. Hold on. I get that the intellect would be a sufficient explanation to explain the causal power. I get it. I understand that. What I'm trying to get at is that it's not a necessary situation. It is not necessary for there to be intellect in order to have causal power, right? You can have causal power without intellect and still.
Like what? The Platonic realms don't have causal power. That's what
I just want to point something out and point this out to y'all. This entire thing. Oh, hold up. Where is it? Like, you could just use this. Or I guess this. I'm going to remove this at some point. Probably today. They're going down a way more complex route than they need to. This right here is my explanation for this. Look at the route they're going down. It's just unnecessary, honestly. Completely unnecessary.
You said so.
You can do this way simpler.
Your suggested replacement. Your suggested replacement was Platonic realms in place of mind and intellect. That's quite literally what you said. Bro, okay, I'm gonna repeat exactly what you said. Hold on. Let's see if I steel man you or not. What you said was that it doesn't contain that this unactualized actualizer must contain a mind or intellect because there are other alternatives that could be associated, like Platonic realms. Platonic realms could be the sufficient case of what these things that can come about from can be. So in place of the intellect and mind, or mind or intellect, you asserted Platonic realms. But the mistake that you made was Platonic realms don't have causal power. So it wouldn't be the sufficient replacement.
Okay, so here's what I was saying. Just to be clear, I was just trying to show how Platonic realms are an example of a non-mind thing that has a capacity to contain abstracta. That's all I was using. That's all I was using Platonic realms for, is to show Elijah.
Still made your position. You brought it up. You brought it up to put in the place of the unactualized actualizer. You brought it up. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, so I'm gonna just keep talking. You brought it up.
What are you, brother?
You brought it up to put in.
I'm in the middle of speaking. I'm trying to respond to everything y'all said. Why are you talking?
Bro,
Let me respond.
bro. I can't. I told you I was gonna have to go. I can't hear you.
Okay, then stop talking. I don't understand what you're saying.
Bro, but you're not. You're straw manning. Like
what am I straw manning? I'm talking about my position. How the
yes,
fuck
and Dom just still manned your position, and you're saying no, and you're trying to say
wait, so I'm not allowed to talk about? I'm not allowed to respond?
No,
did I just say nah and leave it there? Did I?
No,
I was in the middle of explaining the nah, right?
You're not saying what you actually said. You were putting forth.
I'm in the middle of explaining.
Oh, hold up. Wait. His channel is Graceful Gatherings? Alright, hold up. Graceful Gatherings. This?
It's crazy. Why do you want me to end live?
Hold up. Wait, this is Elijah? The guy from this video? Okay. I'm gonna keep muted for right now. Oh damn, he vanished. Oh, never mind. This is him? Why is there so much delay? Okay. I'll fix the delay for next stream. Oh, that's sick. Let's hear what he's got to say.
You actually went live.
What's the name of the character that you have on your profile?
What's his
Rapunzel.
What's his TikTok? I want to get his TikTok. I'm gonna add him on TikTok. I know the other guy's live right now. This guy. Let's see. I wonder how long this delay is for me switching screens. Jeez. The delay is that long? It's like 14 seconds. Wow. Sad cable. I've been baptized with the nice. If y'all know his
What's
TikTok,
the deal, YouTube? You've been baptized in the body of Christ.
Yeah. DM me if you know his TikTok. Let's continue.
What are you talking about?
Go ahead.
You talking about something? What are you saying is yeah.
Just go ahead, bro. Because you're telling me I didn't represent you correctly. That's what you're saying.
What I'm saying is,
did I misrepresent you?
You said a bunch of correct things. I would say you were like 95%.
Did I misrepresent you though?
I don't think you did so intentionally. I don't think you misrepresented me.
I'm not asking if it was intentional or not.
So no, you didn't misrepresent me.
Okay, so what
you
part
missed
did I
some stuff.
misrepresent you?
You missed some stuff is what I'm saying. Here's what you're missing.
What did I miss?
Here's what you're missing. What you're missing is the reason behind me stating that me mentioning Platonic realms is to just show that there is no entailment from there being a containment of abstracta, that it has to be a mind. Platonic realms is an example. Look, just listen, just hear me out. Platonic realms are an example of containment of abstracta without a mind. Now, the further question is it possible that you can have a containment of abstracta and for that thing that it's contained in to have causal power? Right? That's the further question. And I'm saying, yes, it's logically possible that you can contain abstracta and have causal power. I'm not saying that the abstracta themselves are causal. I'm saying that the thing that containing the abstracta is causal. Similar to me, I'm somebody that's containing abstracta, but the abstracta contained within me aren't causal, but me, the person containing the abstracta, is causal. So why couldn't there not be an entity that contains the abstracta that has causal power, but the abstracta themselves not having causal power, the thing itself who contains...
That's our freaking position. You're not tracking.
No,
using your very stop talking. The very example that you just used. You have causal power. You contain abstracta.
Yes.
The reason why you can actualize the abstracta that are contained in you is because you have intellect. You
I said
have
it's
a
sufficient.
mind.
Yes, I
Bro,
said it's
stop
sufficient, but not
talking.
necessary.
Stop talking. You have a mind. You have intellect. So therefore, it is obligatory that if you are having these abstracta contained in you, the only way that these abstracta can be actualized is through intellect and mind, because intellect and mind are grounded in you, which has causal power. A Platonic realm doesn't suffice for that because it doesn't have causal power in and of itself. So obtaining abstracta doesn't even follow. That's the point. So for God, where all of these abstracta are contained, the actualization of them must come from him because he's the uncaused first causer. And therefore he must have mind, because just like you in your example, in order for you to obtain your contain your abstracta and then actualize them, they must come from your causal power, which is grounded in your mind, intellect.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, except for one thing, right? I agree that the reason that I'm able to, the reason I have causal power is partially, if not largely, if not entailing from my mind. My mind gives me the ability to have causal power. Correct. What I'm challenging you is to provide me for a logical contradiction for an entity that doesn't have a mind to have causal power and have the containment of abstracta. That's what I'm saying. Look, this is called sufficiency and necessity. I agree that me having a mind or God having a mind is sufficient to explain God's causal power or their causal power.
Yeah, so then it suffices. So then it suffices. You have the burden now. The burden now is on you, though.
I agree with that. I agree.
The burden now is on you, though, because you're the only one that's violating the principle of sufficient reasoning, bro.
No, I'm not.
Your worldview for sure violates the principle of sufficient reasoning. It most definitely does.
Hold on. What I'm saying is, yes, it is sufficient to say if God had intellect, that his intellect will be the reason why, or if the actual actualizer had intellect, that intellect will be sufficient to explain the causal power. Now, what I've been hearing both of you say, and maybe you don't mean to say this, maybe I'm misunderstanding. What I've been hearing is that God or the actual actualizer having intellect is the only way that the actual actualizer can have causal power. And I'm saying that we can grant actual actualizer, but it doesn't necessitate mind, right? Because you can have an actual actualizer that doesn't have a mind that has causal power. That's not possible. So now
you haven't presented.
Now I want to hear.
Hold on. You have not presented a demonstration of that even being a possibility. You just said, yeah, cause it can, cause it cause. You haven't presented any type of demonstration that suffices in what you just articulated.
I can do it right now. Ready?
Do it.
Yeah. I can do that right now. I can do it right now. Ready? All right. So in order to demonstrate possibility, right, in logic, in modal logic, what you have to do is show that it doesn't contain a contradiction. Something is logically possible if it doesn't if it doesn't have or contain a contradiction. That is literally true. There's physical possibility, there's logical possibility, and something that's physically impossible means that it violates a physical law. Something is logically impossible is if it violates a logical law. There is no logical law violation for saying that there's an entity that has causal power without a mind.
There's no logical contradiction with pigs flying either, bro. You're just being obtuse on purpose. That's
Elijah,
dumb.
you agree with me then?
Well, I mean, the entire idea, like, this is just not the way to go about it. Like, from them, it's just go back to the principle of proportionate causality. Like, this entire conversation is like just based on like, oh, it's technically possible. Like, he brought up like the pigs flying thing. It's just, yeah, that's technically not impossible, right? It's the same thing he's doing here. But if you keep going down this road trying to debate that, and he's just going to keep doing the same thing, it's not going to get anywhere. Versus with like the principle of proportionate causality, you can show that it's literally impossible for a non-conscious being to create a conscious thing. He's already affirmed that humans are conscious. The only way he could then show that a non-conscious being could create us, since he affirms that humans are conscious, is by violating the principle of proportionate causality, and then you just show how why you can't violate the principle of proportionate causality. And that's the debate. Instead of doing all this loops, we're getting nowhere.
No. The thing. Well,
Steven, Elijah, and Buggy all stream right now.
Oh no, I don't. So
wait. No, Blondie just agreed with me that what I said.
I did not agree with you. I did not agree. I said, bro, stop.
That's all I'm saying. It's a logically possible. Yes,
stop talking, bro.
Exactly, Nick Tyrannos. It's really just based on like it's technically logically possible.
Yeah, Hatim, real quick. So I think one of the things to keep in mind is what we are up until this point, what we know about the unactualized actualizer, and it's that this being is pure act, or purely actual. So if you're granting premise one of the principle proportionate causality, you're saying that it exists in this thing either formally, virtually, or immanently, which means in a more perfected way, right? So if it contains these things and has causal power in a more perfect way, it would exist as it does in an intellect.
Wait, why? What's the argument that? Wait, hold on 1 second. You said formally, virtually, or imminent, right? Why can't it just only be virtually? What's the argument that it can't be virtually?
Yeah, because virtually implies potential. It means that I have virtual containment means that I have the means in which I can bring about this thing. That's passive potency.
Wait,
does not have
my understanding
does not have passive potency.
When you said virtually, I heard you saying that.
He just explained it, bro. He just
Yeah,
explained
it
what
means that I
virtually.
don't like if I cause you to have a dollar. If I cause, if I cause you, so like a seed. Wait, hold on. A seed has the virtual, because this is what you're talking about. A seed has the virtual containment to be a tree. That's potential. It virtually contains a tree. It has the ability to bring about that cause, but it is not yet. That's passive potency. That's why it cannot be contained in the purely actual actualizer in a virtual way.
Okay, so what do you say? If I'm saying that the cause of the universe is just all it just contains the basic fundamental structure, the fundamental building blocks of the universe, right?
We don't have to talk about the building blocks of the universe.
I'm trying to ask a question so I can be clear here, please.
Okay, all right.
My understanding. So here's my imagination of the actual actualizer that isn't a mind, that doesn't have a mind, right?
Okay.
This actual actualizer is just going to contain all the fundamental building blocks that are necessary to create whatever formation of anything, right? And so it doesn't have the thing that it composes, but it has everything necessary to
That's virtual containment.
What?
That's so
virtual.
You're saying that it has the ability to bring this thing out, right? But it's not. That means that something moves it from having the ability to actually doing it. That's not the purely actual actualizer.
Somebody moves it? What do you mean somebody moves it?
That means it changes. It goes from I have the ability to bring these things out, but in order to actually bring these things out, something needs to actualize me to bring these things out.
And so when you're saying that the actual actualizer, right? You're saying that everything that exists has already existed in the sense that there isn't anything the actual actualizer is creating. It's already created and nothing else.
No, that's not what I don't know.
What? How the frick did he get that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Hold on, I'm trying to be clear. So just to be clear, right? The actual actualizer, it doesn't do anything in the sense that there isn't anything that it changes from one state to another. Everything that it's ever going to do, it's doing, or it has already done. Because in order for it to do something new, right, it means that there has to be something that it hasn't done yet. Correct?
I don't.
In order for the actual actualizer to do something new, that means there would have to been something that it hasn't done yet. Correct?
I mean,
yes or no?
If you're saying that it's doing something new, that's going to get into a whole nother
It can't look.
That's
Look. The actual actualizer cannot do anything new. Correct? Because that would entail that it hasn't done anything yet.
That's not true. But when you're getting into new, you're getting into that's not true. But when you're getting into new, you're getting into time, and you're getting to a whole bunch of other metaphysical things.
I'm trying to be clear because it's not clear to me why an actual actualizer, right, couldn't do something down the line, right? And so I just want to be clear here.
So to be clear, all we're saying is that the unactualized actualizer has no passive potency. It's not composed of passive potency and active potency. It is purely actual.
I get what you're saying, but
so then that means you can't posit that something is virtually contained in this purely actual actualizer because virtual containment implies passive potency.
Look, I'm trying to be clear on what those terms mean, right? Because my understanding, my understanding of what you're saying that an unactualized actualizer is that doesn't have any potency, right? That it's all actual. My understanding is that it can't do anything new. It can't do something else.
No. Okay, so here, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I mean, unknown. Either way, whether it's active potency or passive potency, it doesn't matter because there can't be any potency. Like, point blank period. It just can't. It's not what the actualizer is. Like, remember what I bring up. I have it here for you. Let's see. Here. This. Oh, what is this? I forgot. I don't know. This is not the time. Right here, this is the explanation for it. I just use this. There can't be any potential at all within it the first cause. So whether it's passive potency or active potency, it doesn't matter. Any potency can't exist within the first cause. It's fully actualized. It has to be.
Wait, is it true or not? That's what I'm asking.
No,
It would be so
right
simple. It
now,
would be so easy if you could just answer.
I'm about
He
to
said no.
define-
What's up with you?
I'm about to define the term for you. So passive potency. When we say that God doesn't have potential, we're saying that he doesn't have passive potency. Passive potency means that you can be acted upon. There is something outside of you that is going to actualize that potential. Right? That's passive potency. Active
All good,
potency
unknown.
is the ability to actualize potential. God has active potency, or the ability to actualize potential. He does not have passive potency, where something outside of him actualizes his potential. He doesn't have potential in that manner. So that's what we're saying. God does not have any passive potency. Only God does not have passive potency.
Yeah, but okay. So Noah Bindy said you said no. No Bindy said you said no to my question. Is that true? You did say no.
I don't, bro. I don't know if you hear motorcycles and stuff going. I don't know.
Okay, so I'll ask my question again because I don't want Noah Bindy to speak for you or something else. So the question was: is it the case that this unactualized actualizer, because they have no potential, they cannot do something new, right? They can't do something that they haven't already done, right?
No, it's not the case, bro.
It's not the case that
the way in which we
right?
experience, so like the way in which we experience it versus the way in which it's happening is going to be two completely different things.
Just to be clear, because they cannot do something, they can't change states. So everything that's done, everything that will be done is already been done.
Okay, there's a way in which we would articulate that. There's no problem, but there's just a way in which we would articulate it. I don't want to get into that argument without you first understanding the purely actual actualizer exists and that it has intellect.
I'm trying to figure out whether it does have intellect through this line of questioning. So
it does have intellect.
Yeah, I understand that's the claim. I'm trying to get there by asking this question.
Okay, I need you to either figure out if it exists, if the forms and patterns of the world exist in the way it does in an abstract, in the way that it does in an intellect, in an immanent way, then that means that it has intellect.
Can we just get the contradiction?
Hold on.
Can we get the contradiction? Can we get the
contradiction? The contradiction is if hey bro, the contradiction is you said you're asking for the contradiction of your premise to put forward, your model, what you're asking for. That's the contradiction. You're asking for the contradiction of your model to put forward.
For what
okay, for this entity that you put forth, that is the first unmoved first mover or uncaused first causer, to not have a mind.
Yeah,
that's the contradiction. Yeah, contradiction. Yeah, so the contradiction in that is that in order for in your worldview that you put forth, this thing that you described has passive potency because it can actualize these things, right?
And Nicteranos, do you think Demetrius? I still have no idea how to pronounce his last name. Stanoloa? I don't know. View on God as a pure subjectivity. Like, what do I think? There's not a problem with it. I mean, I haven't looked into it. Like, I haven't read and studied what he says, but I know what he says. He asserts that, like, the Trinity is like subjective objectivity, right? That's what the Orthodox Church affirms, right? Like, we affirm it's a personal God. We affirm that each person is self-conscious, and doesn't like objectify each other. As far as I'm aware, it's just restating like what we affirm, but with like different wording or different terminology. Because I don't think anyone else like used pure subjectivity or like what he was talking about, like subjectively objective. I don't think any other fathers or councils ever used those terms. But I haven't read him extensively. So, I mean, what I said could be just completely wrong. I don't know.
But it comes to bring it about. It comes to bring it about. It's not contained in it immanently. You have it contained in it virtually.
Okay.
So that's the contradiction, because if it's contained in it virtually, then it has to be acted upon, versus having it being brought out from an active potent standpoint. That means that this purely actual actualizer isn't purely actual. So therefore it's not the uncaused first cause or the prime mover. So it's
Okay.
violating this. It's violating the principle of sufficient reasoning.
Okay, so to be clear, when I ask for a contradiction, I'm asking for the proposition and its negation.
Yeah. You can't have potential. If you in yourself have potential, you cannot actualize potential in yourself without having the causal power in and of yourself. So if you yourself have potential, you can't both have potential as your base and grounding, and then actualization. That is the P and not P. It's like saying you can be non-existent. It's like saying you can be non-existent and then bring yourself into existence. That is a P and not P.
So what?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like if I have it written down too. On the sheet it says it. I think it's up there, but I think there's also one down here. Dang, really? It's just right here. I thought I had a second one. It's exactly what I'm saying. To be able, like, this is what I say right here, right? It's literally impossible to self-actualize because you would have to have potential. Meaning, look, if you go down here, potency, the capacity to become something else, but you're not yet that thing. And actuality, which means you're already that thing or state. That's the P or not P. You can't not be something, not yet be that thing, and at the same time be that thing.
Let me
Hey, bro, if I
let
say
me
it twice,
recap, I'm trying to recap what you're saying, so you can make sure I understand you. You're saying something like it is the case that is actual, and it is not the case that it is actual. Is that the P and not P?
Yeah, it's having
It is
potential.
actual and
It
it
is both. It is actual and not actual. So it is existing and not existing because you have anything that are virtual.
Yeah. Okay. And you're saying and you're saying something like, in order for something to be uncaused, it can't have potential. Correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now, potential means that it can't change, right?
It can't be acted upon and it doesn't change. Correct.
Okay. But it has the ability to enact other things that have potential or form other things. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, this thing that has the ability to enact other things that have potential and form other things, right? We can say, sure, maybe that's not virtual, right? We can say that's not a virtual effect or a virtual cause. We can fine. So we can have was either formal or
Then it's imminent. And if it's imminent, then it's from intellect.
What about formal? What's formal?
So formal means that it has it in the exact same way that it's causing it. So that's the material way.
Okay. And eminent means what exactly?
It has it in a more perfected way. So like how you possess, or you could cause triangularity because you can form triangles in your mind, but you don't have to be a triangle yourself.
How would you know whether or not something is perfect? I understand in the case of shapes, that's super clear, right? But when it comes to a perfect mind, that's not going to be something clear.
Yeah, it means for a thing to have like a privation, it means that it has like some unactualized potential. So like that's why the being could be no less than fully good, because privation implies that it has some actualization that's not present. But this being is fully and purely actual, so it's fully good. So, oh my goodness,
it is not that hard, bro. Well, all he's saying is that. Hold up. Let's go back here. It's not that hard. Let's say this is what this is fully actual, right? Like this, filling out this circle is fully actual. All he's saying that is, if you're lacking something, then you, even if it's just a fraction, you have a privation. You have potential. It's that simple. Like this little space here. This isn't actualized.
Using the term good.
No potential. Are you tracking what he's saying,
yeah, so
bro?
like, I'm talking about when I say perfect, I'm saying that it doesn't have any potential or privations, right? So like
privation is what?
The deprivation of a thing, like
the deprivation.
What's the name? I'm sorry, I can't think of a word. What's another?
The lack of.
Yeah, deprivation. Yeah.
Lack of a thing.
the lack of a thing, like how darkness is a privation of light.
Why are you
Right.
saying privation? I'm thinking deprivation is different than privation. So I'm not sure why.
It doesn't, you know what he's saying, regardless. Like, I don't, why you?
The D part is what removes it, and he's saying the
It's
opposite.
the same. It's the same usage, bro. You're losing the plot.
Yeah.
Lack of.
So like like for this being that is perfect because it doesn't have any unactualized potential. So some actualization that should be present, right? That's missing. It doesn't have that. So it's perfect.
How do we know what should be present? How would anyone know that? How would anyone know the criteria of things listed that should?
I'm giving you the definition for perfect.
Exactly, bro.
Well,
Which
that's all
contains
I'm
to
doing.
them, which contains to the entity having the intellect in mind, because we're losing the plot. The whole point of this is talking about this entity that you presented forth that doesn't have these things, so therefore can't be the replacement that you purported in place of of our worldview. So you have to ask it. So you have to be the one to tell us what suffices for these issues that arise with your worldview. Don't ask us. It's your problem.
Well, I'm agnostic on the issue in the first place.
Yeah, but you're saying nuh-uh.
I was giving a critique.
Yeah, but you're saying nuh-uh and then providing a replacement. But your replacement is even worse. Whereas when you've already admitted that ours suffices the principles. So you're just arguing just to argue.
How's it worse?
You made a potential. You made an unactualized actualizer that isn't actually unactualized. You made a contradictory entity.
No,
This has to be rage bait. This entire time he's been explaining this, and then you're gonna ask it. What's the problem here? He's been explaining the problem for like 35 minutes, dude.
Of talking about it right now. Look,
bro.
Look, if it's,
I'm not over this conversation because it's not even getting anywhere anymore. You're just literally just saying nuh-uh, and I don't really have an explanation of why it's nuh-uh. I'm just saying yours is nuh-uh.
Yeah. So I'm in the middle of trying to explain it right now, right? So
explain what? Explain your view.
I'm about to.
Go ahead.
So it doesn't seem to be the case that it's impossible for something that doesn't have a mind to be imminent. Now, I'd love to hear the contradiction for.
We just told you. You're repeating yourself. You're just regurgitating this dumb ideology.
No, you didn't.
All right, man.
You provided the contradiction for something else.
That's just where it ends. That has to be rage bait. Wait, what is this?
You believe in the universe.
Who's Monkey Boy, bro? You know what? We'll save this to the watch later. This will be something we watch like next stream. What is this? Walk in spirit, you're betraying me. No, I don't care.
Man.
Alright, yeah. This is where I'm gonna end the stream, y'all. Pretty good stream. Oh, had me panicking for a second. Wow. We good 3.5 hours. But yeah, I'll have those things added to the argument of motion sheet today. I think next live stream will probably be like Monday. And yeah, we'll probably do another TikTok debate thing and some reacts. Yeah, Tactical, send me what you want me to watch. I'll send it to me and I'll add the what am I gonna say, dude? My brain. I'll add it to the watch later and we'll watch it next stream. This guy's watching both of us? You can only pick one. You're cheating. Buddy thinks he's Muhammad. Baby got book. Alright. What is this? Alright. We'll listen to this next stream. Dang. Oh wait. Okay. I thought that was the different one. Alright, we'll listen to next stream we'll start with the Baby Got book. How about that? Y'all want to start with the Baby Got book? That'll be like the intro. You know what I'm saying? Alright, bet. By the way, is asking whether the essence is unbegotten or begotten fallacious? Because I think it collapses person and essence distinction. What? No, the thing... The essence is unbegotten. It doesn't collapse the person and essence distinction. Or like, how would that collapse? We affirm they're formally identical, but lesbiano question? Yeah, no. I don't even see how that would collapse at all. In fact, if it does, then the Orthodox Church theology is some doo-doo garbage, because we literally explicitly affirm that the essence is unbegotten. Like, it's uncreated. No, why do you don't need to say sorry. What? You ain't done nothing wrong. Yeah, if Libiano's asking that, like, I wonder, like, what's his argument that it collapses person and essence distinction? Like, I don't see how that collapses. If that is the case, then he pretty much just debunked Orthodox theology at that point. Because we affirm the essence is uncreated and unbegotten. Oh, the persons. Oh. Wait, the persons collapse into the person and essence distinction? The distinction between the persons and essence? What? No. I think I actually think I addressed this. I forgot fully what he said, so I can't like fully debunk it because I don't remember. But on the stream, we reacted to that God logic debate, and I explained it at some point here, like towards the middle, I think. Unbegotten and uncreated the same? No, because we affirm, like, if the Nicene, when we recite the Nicene Creed, we say, for the Son, for example, begotten, not made. Like, he's not created. He's eternally begotten in the sense that he's beget from the Father. Just like the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father, but he's not created. Yeah, the essence is uncreated. Whenever the person and essence distinction wouldn't collapse. In fact, like, if we just affirm that the persons didn't have hypostatic properties and all that, then that would collapse the essence and person distinction, because then there would be no more distinction between the essence and the persons. If you just, like, having a distinction between them wouldn't collapse the distinction between them. That's just, I mean, this is kind of self-defeating. Because I think the Father is unbegotten, but the essence is uncreated. He's coming forth from the Father. Yeah. He comes forth from the Father. And I don't see what, like, it's not fallacious. I don't even know what fallacy it could be. Yeah, eternally begotten. Oh, and in his argument too, I had a way better response because I remember what he said. Like, if you go back to the stream, he argued also that, like, talking about if paternity was a necessary for God, and you could just argue that, for example, since God is triune and God can't change, then it's necessary of the being of God to be triune. Since he is unchanging and he's in his unchanging state, he's triune. So for him not to be triune would be a change. For real. Well, yeah. I'm gonna end the live here then, y'all. Yeah. I'll try to be live, like, most likely Monday. Hold up. I think to ask whether the essence is unbegotten and begotten is ridiculous, because the question is supposed to tackle the Father, the Son, not the essence. Oh, wait, he was asking that? Yeah, that's just, like, completely irrelevant. And no, the essence isn't begotten. that we affirm hypostatic properties. I think where he's going, like I can see where his logic is. I think he thinks that whenever we talk about like the persons fully possessing the essence, that would equate to like, or like the persons being formally identical to the essence would equate to the essence literally having all the hypostatic properties. Okay, yeah. All the hypostatic properties, which it doesn't. We affirm that there's hypostatic properties distinct from the essence. That's what it means to be formally identical. Let me see if I can actually pull up the definition for you too. What? Yeah, I guess it just doesn't pull up the definition. Actually, ChatGPT would define it for you. Define formally identical as it relates to. If you ever need the definition, it's this. I just don't remember off the top of my head where specifically who defined it, like which father or saint defined it, where it was defined. Yeah. Hold on. Are formally, yes. Define formally identical, bro. That two or more things are identical in form or essence, even if they are distinguished in some other respect. Okay, yeah. So here, the persons are formally identical in the sense that they fully, to the essence, in the sense that they fully possess the essence, but that doesn't mean completely identical. There's also hypostatic properties. Some people say they're materially identical. I know, like, for example, Ananda says they're materially identical. Or the same in matter or substance, but not necessarily in the same in form, identity, or function. Yeah, this distinction. I personally, I just say formally identical, and I do not know, like, I don't know what the difference is here. Sameness is, I heard, like, from my understanding, materially identical would refer to like actual matter, as it says here. So since like the hypostatic, like the hypostases aren't made out, and the essence aren't made out like an actual physical substance, like atoms, etc., they wouldn't be materially identical. They'd be formally identical. But I know some Orthodox that hold to materially identical, but I just don't see how they're materially identical. Maybe materially identical is defined a different way, like they define it a different way. But or like they read it as this, like composed of the same material substance, in the sense that the hypostases possess the essence, or so like maybe that's what they mean. But I feel like materially identical would actually just refer to matter itself. Maybe it could also refer to something that's not actually made out of atoms. I might just be wrong. You say that the essence is uncreated, and then you automatically point at the uncreatedness of the persons. Well, yeah, all the persons are uncreated. Said in chat that the essence is uncreated and has nothing to do with beginning. He kicked. I mean, yeah. I'm actually surprised he kicked you for that. Honestly, I would expect him to try to debate you on that. The fact that he kicked you is wild, but this is correct. The begettingness, also we affirm that the begetting doesn't mean created. Like in Nicaea 1, when we recite it at church, it's begotten, not made, of one substance with the Father and all that. How do you spell Nicene? What's the right way? I see EAN. I see it spelled both ways. I wonder what the truth. Hold up, where is it? Only begotten, the Son of God, begotten, not made, consubstantial with the Father. We don't say consubstantial in my church. Oh, it's Catholic. By the Holy became man, who proceeds from the Father. Yeah, we specifically affirm begotten, not made in our Nicene Creed. Maybe he just doesn't know that. God bless Mario. Hope you have a great day too, brother. You're right. Essence of God is uncreated by definition. He's probably trying to make someone admit our God. Well, yeah, that's what he does. Like, if you actually listen to him debate, all he does is like ask poorly worded questions or ask questions of people who don't know philosophy until they make a mistake. To like, maybe we do. I could have sworn we used a different word than consubstantial. Maybe I'm wrong. Unknown. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. I probably am. There are terms related to the persons only in terms related to the essence only being begotten. Yeah, exactly. It'd be more of like a category error. I don't confuse it. Oh, yeah, wait, no, that would be a fallacy then. If you're making that claim or trying to say that they equate, but if you're just asking the question, it wouldn't be. I guess, yeah, it would be a category error. I see the fallacy now. Related to persons with the terms. Yeah. I think the problem with a lot of Muslims is they think they're, like, we affirm that they're literally identical. The hypostases are literally identical to essence. Which would mean that the essence has the hypostatic properties. And then that's why you get, like, the stuff of, like, so the essence is begotten and unbegotten at the same time? Isn't that a contradiction? All that stuff. Because they think we're literally no distinction. But yeah, I'm going to end the live here, y'all. I appreciate y'all for all tuning in and coming. Appreciate the likes, too. We got plenty of likes. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you're going to church. Make sure you're praying the hours and praying before bed and when you wake up in the morning. And yeah. Have a great rest of the day, y'all. Next stream probably going to be Monday. And yeah. God bless. See ya.